The quantum signature appeared 3 seconds before the explosion. Not enough time to abort. Not enough time to shield the reactor core. Just enough time for Tony Stark to realize his experimental dimensional bridge had catastrophically miscalculated the fabric of reality itself. The arc reactor in his chest flared white-hot as spatial coordinates inverted. His workshop in Avengers Tower folded into impossible geometry. FRIDAY's voice cut to static mid-warning. And then Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, former Avenger, was falling through a sky that tasted wrong. He crashed through the roof of a condemned factory in Gotham's East End at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. His Mark 85 armor absorbing impact that would have liquefied a normal human. Repulsors flared automatically, stabilizing his descent through 3 floors of rusted machinery before slamming into concrete that cracked like a spiderweb beneath crimson and gold metal. FRIDAY status report, Tony said, pushing himself upright. His HUD flickered, displaying error messages in languages that shouldn't exist. FRIDAY. Nothing. Just the hollow echo of his own breathing. Inside the helmet and the distant wail of sirens that sounded almost but not quite like the ones he knew. Tony's sensors painted the warehouse in thermal imaging, empty, structurally unsound, and somehow radiating an electromagnetic signature. His armor couldn't quite identify. Wrong universe physics, his mind supplied immediately. Dimensional displacement. Fantastic. Added to the list of Tuesdays. He retracted his faceplate, breathing air that smelled of rain, rust, and something darker he couldn't name. Chemical waste, maybe. Despair, possibly. Gotham City didn't announce itself with signs or landmarks. It announced itself with atmosphere. The kind of atmosphere that made Tony's arc reactor feel like a spotlight in a city that worshipped shadows. Okay, Stark. Assess. Adapt. Survive. He interfaced with his armor manually, running diagnostics without AI assistance for the first time in years. Arc reactor. Functional, but the energy output was fluctuating. Repulsors. Operational, but required recalibration. Satellites. Offline. Stark's servers. Unreachable. He was alone, cut off, in a city that his sensors were telling him had a higher ambient fear-to-hope ratio than anywhere on his Earth. Tony lifted into the air on repulsor thrust, armor whining slightly as it compensated for atmospheric differences. His HUD mapped the city skyline, Gothic spires, Art Deco mixed with industrial decay, a bridge that looked almost like the Brooklyn Bridge's angry, traumatized cousin. And there, in the distance, a spotlight cutting through storm clouds. Not a circle, a bat. Well, Tony muttered, that's not ominous at all. He flew low, hugging rooftops, his armor's sensors drinking in data. This wasn't his New York. This wasn't his Earth. The technology level was comparable but different, less sleek, more brutal. The police helicopters he passed had mounted guns that looked designed to fight wars, not crime. The gargoyles on the buildings weren't decorative. They were strategic, perfect perches for something. Someone. Tony felt it before his sensors registered it. The sensation of being watched by something. Infinitely patient. His targeting systems screamed warnings half a second too late. A shadow detached from a water tower to his left, capes spreading like wings. And Tony's world became a blur of calculated violence. The impact drove him into a rooftop, armor screeching as something, batarangs, his mind identified, analyzing the projectiles embedding themselves in his repulsor ports, disabled, his flight capability with surgical precision. Tony rolled, repulsors charging in his palms. But the figure was already gone, melted back into darkness that shouldn't be able to hide anything from his sensors. I don't know what you are, a voice said from everywhere and nowhere, processed through a modulator that turned words into gravel and broken glass. But you don't belong in my city. Tony's targeting computer finally locked on, behind him, above him, to his left, signals contradicting themselves in a pattern that was either sensor malfunction or intentional misdirection. He chose a direction and fired a repulsor blast, controlled, non-lethal. The beam illuminated nothing but rain and stone. Your city, Tony called out, buying time to analyze. Funny, I don't see your name on any deeds. Also, breaking and entering is usually frowned upon. along with assault. I'm new here, but I'm guessing those are still crimes. Silence. Then movement, a blur of gray and black, that his armor's processors could barely track. Tony activated his uni-beam, the arc reactor's full output channeling through his chest piece. But the figure anticipated, dodged, and suddenly, there was something attached to Tony's chest that beeped twice, before exploding with enough force to stagger him backward. Not enough to breach the armor, just enough to prove a point. You have 15 seconds to explain why Stark Industries technology is operating in Gotham, the voice continued. And this time Tony's sensors caught him, perched on a gargoyle, cape wrapped around armored form, white eyes glowing in a cowl designed to weaponize fear itself. Before I dismantle that suit piece by piece. Batman. Tony's mind put the pieces together with the speed that had made him Earth's foremost futurist. The bat symbol, the brutal efficiency, the voice that promised pain and delivered it with interest. He'd heard about this one. In his world, Batman was an urban legend that Natasha had mentioned once. A story about a billionaire who'd gone completely off the deep end after tragedy. But this wasn't his world. And this Batman was very, very real. Stark Industries? Tony kept his voice light despite his hard hammering. Love the brand recognition, but I think you've got me confused with someone else. Name's Tony Stark. Iron Man, recently displaced person of the interdimensional variety. He raised his hand slowly, repulsors powering down in a gesture of peace. Look, I don't want trouble. I just want to figure out where the hell I am and how to get home. You're in Gotham City. Batman's voice carried no comfort, only confirmation. And you're not going anywhere until I know exactly what you are. The cape swirled, and Batman dropped from the gargoyle, landing in a crouch that transitioned seamlessly into standing. He was shorter than Tony expected, but radiated presence that made size irrelevant. Every line of his armor, Kevlar and tactical plating, Tony's engineer mind noted, was designed for intimidation and efficiency. This wasn't a superhero costume. This was a weapon system with a man inside. What I am. Tony's faceplate retracted, showing his face. Calculated risk, but necessary. Human connection. Disarming the threat through vulnerability. I'm a guy who built a suit to escape terrorists. Used it to become a hero. Saved the world a few times. And then apparently, miscalculated a quantum bridge. Experiment badly enough to fall into whatever nightmare dimension. This is. He gestured at the Gotham skyline. No offense, but your city could really use some urban renewal. And maybe a hug. Batman's eyes narrowed behind the cowl. His hand moved to his utility belt in a gesture that was pure threat assessment, ready to deploy the next countermeasure if Tony made a wrong move. This is your only warning. Stark. Batman's voice dropped into a register that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to primal fear. Gotham operates on rules you don't understand. Heroes die here. If you want to survive, you'll come with me now and answer every question I ask. If you run, I'll assume you're a threat. And I eliminate threats. Tony's HUD calculated odds, 17 different combat scenarios. None of them favorable without full system functionality. This Batman had already disabled his flight capability, demonstrated knowledge of how to exploit armor weak points, and moved faster than Tony's targeting systems could track. Fighting would be stupid, which meant cooperation. For now. Well, when you put it that way. Tony raised his hands higher. Lead the way, bad guy. But just so we're clear, I really am one of the good guys. I've even got references. If you can somehow contact Captain America in whatever version of reality this is, he'll vouch for me. Probably. We have a complicated friendship. Batman said nothing. He fired a grapple line. And Tony watched him ascend into the Gotham night with the grace of something that belonged to the darkness. A moment later, coordinates appeared on Tony's HUD, transmitted directly to his armor despite FRIDAY being offline. Batman had hacked his systems in the 30 seconds they'd been talking. The coordinates pointed to a location outside the city, underground, and Tony's armor was already following the transmitted route commands, whether he wanted to or not. Okay, Tony muttered to himself, as his armor carried him through the rain toward whatever waited in the dark. So we're doing this the hard way. Great. Love a good kidnapping. Really sets the tone for interdimensional diplomacy. But as Gotham's skyline fell away behind him and the bat signal continued to burn, in the clouds like a warning to all who would bring chaos to this city. Tony Stark realized something that made his arc reactor pulse just a little faster. He wasn't in his world anymore. He was in a world where the hero was as dark as the villains, where fear was a weapon, where symbols had power, and where a genius billionaire in a cape had apparently decided that Tony Stark was either an asset or a threat. The question was, which would he choose to be? If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. The coordinates led to a waterfall. Tony's armor descended into the cave system behind the cascading water, and his sensors registered technology that made even his cynical engineer's heart skip a beat. Surveillance systems that would make S.H.I.E.L.D. jealous, a vehicle bay that housed machines designed for urban warfare, and a computer system that was currently dissecting every byte of data in his armor's memory banks. He landed on a platform, surrounded by darkness that seemed alive, and waited for the Batman to appear from whatever shadow he'd chosen for his entrance. Tony Stark had faced gods, monsters, and his own demons. But standing in the Batcave, dripping rainwater onto stone that had witnessed decades of crusade against crime, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Uncertainty about whether he was the hero or the villain of this particular story. The Batcave revealed itself in layers, like a predator showing its teeth one fang at a time. First, the vehicles, a tank disguised as a car, a jet that looked like it belonged in a war zone, motorcycles built for pursuit and punishment. Then the trophy cases, a giant penny, a mechanical dinosaur, a playing card encased in glass that radiated malevolence even behind bulletproof polymer. Finally, the centerpiece, a computer array that made Tony's systems look quaint, monitoring every heartbeat in Gotham City with the obsessive attention of a god who refused to blink. Tony's armor released him without his command, another remote hack, another demonstration of superior preparation. He stepped onto the platform in his casual clothes, arc reactor glowing through his Black Sabbath t-shirt, and forced himself not to reach for the emergency beacon that wouldn't reach anyone. In this universe anyway. Nice cave, he said, voice echoing off limestone walls that had witnessed secrets Tony couldn't begin to imagine. Very lair of ultimate evil meets world's most depressing man cave. The dinosaur really ties the room together. Batman emerged from shadows that shouldn't have been able to hide. A 6-foot man in armor, but somehow did. He moved to the computer without acknowledging Tony's presence. Gauntlet fingers dancing across keyboards with the precision of someone who'd typed 10,000 case files into these systems. Your armor's technology is 17 years ahead of any known Earth engineering, Batman said, his voice echoing in the cave's vastness. The arc reactor in your chest produces clean energy at an output ratio that violates 3 laws of thermodynamics. Your AI was sophisticated enough to fight my intrusion protocols for 7.3 seconds before I disabled it. He turned, wide eyes and the cowl fixing on Tony with an intensity that felt like being dissected. You're either an alien, a time traveler, or something worse. Worse. Tony crossed his arms, reactor light casting blue shadows across his face. Worse than what? And for the record, I prefer interdimensional refugee. Has a certain je ne sais quoi that alien lacks. Batman's hand moved across the console, and a holographic display materialized between them, Tony's armor specs, deconstructed in real time with an understanding that made Tony's stomach tighten. This wasn't just hacking. This was comprehension. Batman had reverse-engineered Mark 85 technology in the time it took Tony to fly from Gotham proper to this cave. The repulsor technology alone could revolutionize warfare, Batman continued, highlighting systems with surgical precision. In the wrong hands, this armor could level cities. Stark Industries doesn't exist in this world, which means you're from somewhere else. Somewhere with different physics, different rules. He leaned forward slightly, a gesture that somehow made him more intimidating despite the distance between them. Somewhere that let you build this without oversight or consequence. Oversight? Tony's laugh was sharp. Oh, we had oversight. Government committees, international accords. The Sokovia Accords, which, fun fact, were named after a city we accidentally dropped from the Sky while fighting a homicidal robot I created. So yeah, consequences? We had those in spades. He stepped closer to the hologram, examining Batman's analysis with grudging respect. You figured this out fast. Faster than most. I'm a detective, Batman said flatly. The world's greatest. And you're a puzzle that appeared in my city without warning, carrying technology that could destabilize global security, claiming to be a hero from another dimension. The cowled head tilted slightly. Prove it. Tony met those wide eyes, recognizing the challenge for what it was, a test. Not of his technology, but of his character. He'd faced these before. From Steve Rogers, from Nick Fury, from Pepper when she'd asked him if he could be more than the weapons he built. JRVS. Tony said quietly, then caught himself. Sorry. Friday. My AI. She's offline because your systems overwhelmed her. But her core personality matrix is still intact in the armor's memory. He gestured to the hologram. Access her logs. You'll see everything. Every mission, every decision. Every time. I put the suit on to protect people instead of profit. His voice hardened. You'll also see every mistake. Every civilian I couldn't save. Every time the armor wasn't enough. I don't hide my failures, Batman. I build better suits because of them. Batman's fingers moved across the keyboard with impossible speed. And suddenly the cave filled with projections. Tony fighting Chitauri over New York. Defending Sokovia against Ultron's army. Standing against Thanos on a ruined planet. Dying with a snap that saved half the universe. Except that last part hadn't happened yet in this timeline. Hadn't happened at all in this dimension where Tony Stark never existed. The silence stretched as Batman watched, absorbing data with the speed of someone who'd trained his mind to process trauma as information. Tony saw his own life reduced to tactical readouts and threat assessments. Saw Batman cataloging every decision, every sacrifice, every moment of heroism and hubris. You're reckless, Batman said finally, and the projections vanished. You escalate conflicts through pride. Your technology has been stolen, copied, and weaponized against civilians in your world at least 47 times according to these logs. You create as many problems as you solve. Yeah, Tony didn't flinch from the assessment. I do. Because I'm human, and humans are messy. And sometimes trying to do the right thing means making spectacular mistakes along the way. He pointed at the playing card in its case. The Joker grinning from behind glass. But I keep trying. I keep building. I keep showing up. That's what heroes do, right? We don't give up, even when the universe gives us every reason to. Batman was silent for a long moment, the cowl hiding whatever expression might have crossed his face. When he spoke again, his voice had lost the edge of immediate threat, replaced by something colder, calculation. You can't go home, he said, not a question but a statement of fact. The quantum signature that brought you here dissipated on arrival. Without access to your world's technology, without your AI's full computational power, you're trapped. He turned back to the computer. You're also broadcasting an energy signature that every scientist and criminal in a 100-mile radius has already detected, which means you've painted a target on yourself the moment you arrived. Tony's jaw tightened. So what? You're going to lock me in here? Keep me as a curiosity in your cave of horrors? No. Batman's hand moved to his utility belt, and for a moment Tony tensed, but the Dark Knight only produced a small device, sleek, black, utterly non-threatening in appearance. I'm going to give you a choice. He held up the device between armored fingers. This is a tracker. Subdermal. It'll let me monitor your location and vital signs. Wear it, follow my rules, and you're free to move through Gotham. I'll provide resources, assistance with adapting your technology to this world's physics, and protection from threats you don't understand yet. The white eyes narrowed. Refuse, and I disable your armor permanently and drop you at GCPD headquarters with a full dossier on your capabilities. The government will have you in a black site within hours. Those are terrible options, Tony said flatly. Option A is be my prisoner with extra steps, and option B is be someone else's prisoner immediately. Where's option C? There is no option C. Batman stepped closer, and Tony suddenly understood why criminals feared this man. It wasn't the armor or the gadgets. It was the absolute certainty in his voice, the unwavering belief that he was right and would enforce that rightness through any means necessary. I don't trust you, Stark. You're a variable I can't control, carrying technology that could tear this world apart if it falls into the wrong hands. But I recognize what you are underneath the ego and the bravado. You're a soldier, someone who fights because he has to, because no one else will. The cowl tilted slightly. Gotham needs soldiers, but only ones who follow orders. Tony stared at the tracker, his engineer's mind already analyzing its construction. Sophisticated, probably impossible to remove without triggering some failsafe. Definitely hackable given time, but not without Batman noticing the attempt. He thought of Pepper's voice telling him to stop making everything more difficult than it needed to be. He thought of Steve's disappointed look every time Tony let pride get in the way of teamwork. He thought of falling through dimensions, alone, cut off from everything he'd built and everyone he'd saved, landing in a city that turned heroes into something darker than they'd ever intended to be. If I agree, Tony said carefully, I want resources, lab space, raw materials, access to your computer systems to help me figure out how to get home. And I want answers about this world, about you, about what the hell kind of city needs a man dressed as a bat to keep it from eating itself alive. You'll get what I decide you need. Batman's tone brooked no negotiation. Nothing more, nothing less. And if you break my rules, if you endanger civilians, if you attract the wrong attention, if you prove you can't be trusted, I will stop you. He paused, letting the threats sink in. Permanently. Tony looked at the tracker again, then at the armor standing dormant on the platform, then at the computer screens showing Gotham's streets alive with crime and violence and desperate people, praying for salvation that might never come. He was Iron Man. He'd faced gods and monsters. He'd died and lived to tell the tale, or would have if that timeline existed here. And now some paranoid vigilante in a cape was demanding submission, demanding trust, demanding that Tony Stark operate under rules designed for a world that ran on fear instead of hope. But he was also trapped, alone, without resources or allies or any way home. Sometimes being a hero meant swallowing your pride and accepting help from people you didn't trust, because the alternative was abandoning people who needed you. Fine, Tony said, holding out his arm. Tag me. But for the record, I'm doing this under protest. And my lawyer, wherever she is in the multiverse, would have a field day with this whole coerced cooperation thing. Batman moved with clinical efficiency, pressing the device against Tony's forearm. There was a brief sting as subcutaneous needles deployed, and then the tracker settled beneath skin, invisible except for a faint warmth that meant it was already integrating with his bioscience. Welcome to Gotham, Mr. Stark, Batman said. And for the first time, Tony heard something that might have been dark amusement in that processed voice. Try not to die. Yeah, Tony muttered, rubbing his arm where the tracker had embedded itself. I'll add it to my to-do list. Right under escape from Nightmare City and avoid getting murdered by cosplayers. Batman turned back to his computer, already dismissing Tony as he pulled up a map of Gotham's East End, tracking some crime pattern that only his obsessive mind could detect. Alfred will show you to the guest quarters. You'll stay here tonight, while I verify your story and assess what threats might already be tracking. Your energy signature. He didn't look back. Get some rest. Tomorrow, you meet Bruce Wayne. Tony blinked. Bruce Wayne? As in the billionaire Bruce Wayne? Playboy philanthropist, owns half of Gotham. Throws parties while the city burns Bruce Wayne. As in your cover identity while you're in my city, Batman said. Still not turning around. You'll need resources, legal standing, and a reason to be in Gotham that doesn't involve dimensional rifts. Bruce Wayne can provide all of that. A pause. He's very good at pretending to be something he's not. And in that moment, watching the Dark Knight work his computers with the dedication of someone who'd sacrificed everything to a mission that would never end. Tony Stark understood. Bruce Wayne was Batman. The billionaire playboy was the vigilante. The man who threw parties was the man who broke bones in alleys. Oh, Tony said quietly, pieces clicking into place with the elegance of a well-designed machine. Oh, that's actually brilliant. The best disguise is the one nobody would ever believe. Who'd suspect the guy getting drunk at galas of being the terrifying bat creature hunting criminals? He laughed, sharp and genuine. We're more alike than I thought. Batman's hands paused on the keyboard, just for a moment, and Tony knew he'd struck something true beneath the armor and the voice and the fear. No, Mr. Stark, Batman said, and his voice carried weight that bent the air between them. We're not. You became a hero to prove you were more than your weapons. I became what criminals fear because someone has to stand in the dark. He finally turned, white eyes burning with purpose that bordered on madness. You chose heroism. I chose necessity. Never forget the difference. Tony met that gaze and saw something he recognized from his own reflection after particularly bad nights. The look of a man who'd stared into the abyss so long that the abyss had carved itself into his soul, leaving scars that would never heal but had to be carried anyway. Because the alternative was letting the darkness win. Yeah, Tony said softly. Okay, I hear you. An older man in a pristine suit emerged from a side passage Tony hadn't noticed, moving with the quiet dignity of someone who'd served in this cave for decades. Alfred Pennyworth, Tony's mind supplied. Batman's files had been comprehensive. Master Stark, Alfred said with a slight British accent and raised eyebrow. If you'll follow me, I've prepared accommodations. I suspect you'll find them more comfortable than the cave floor, though perhaps less dramatic. Tony followed the butler toward what he assumed were the manor's residential levels, leaving Batman to his computers and his crusade and his terrible, lonely war against a city that never stopped bleeding. As they ascended stairs carved from living rock, Tony glanced back once. Batman stood silhouetted against the screens, cape spreading like wings, a symbol of fear maintaining vigil over his city. Two genius billionaires. Two men who'd turned trauma into purpose. Two different approaches to the same question. How do you save a world that doesn't want to be saved? Tony Stark was about to find out which approach Gotham would break first. The Wayne Manor guest suite was obscenely comfortable. Egyptian cotton sheets. A view of manicured grounds that stretched toward Gotham's skyline. Furniture that cost more than most people's houses. Tony stood at the window in borrowed sleepwear. Arc reactor casting blue light across hardwood floors, and wondered how Bruce Wayne maintained the charade. How did you throw galas in a house built on top of a cave dedicated to vengeance? How did you smile at socialites when you'd spent the previous night breaking a human trafficker's ribs? He'd gotten 3 hours of sleep before his mind started racing through reactor recalibration equations, and now, at 6 a.m., he watched the sun try and fail to brighten Gotham's perpetual gloom. The city fights the light, Alfred said from the doorway, carrying a breakfast tray with the efficiency of someone who'd perfected the art of anticipating needs. Master Bruce says it's the pollution from decades of industrial negligence. I say it's something deeper. Gotham doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be survived. Tony accepted coffee that was exactly the right temperature, prepared exactly how he'd have made it himself despite never telling anyone his preferences. You've been doing this a long time, taking care of him. The mission, 38 years, Alfred confirmed, setting the tray on an antique table. Since the night a boy watched his parents die and decided to declare war on crime itself. I've stitched wounds, maintained equipment, and pretended not to notice when he comes home more broken than the night before. The butler's eyes, sharp, knowing, fixed on Tony. You understand, don't you? What it costs. Being the man in the armor. Tony's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, feeling the reactor's hum through fabric and flesh. Yeah, I understand. The question is whether the cost is worth it. Whether saving the world means losing yourself piece by piece until you're not sure what's left. Master Bruce would say the sacrifice is necessary, Alfred replied, adjusting silverware with mechanical precision. I would say that men who think like that need someone to remind them they're still human. That's why I'm here, Mr. Stark, to ensure the mission doesn't consume him completely. A pause, weighted with meaning. Perhaps you'll need similar reminders. Before Tony could respond, Bruce Wayne himself appeared in the doorway. No cowl, no armor, just a man in an immaculately tailored suit who looked like he'd spent the night sleeping instead of prowling rooftops. The transformation was perfect. Where Batman's eyes burned with intensity, Bruce Wayne's held calculated boredom. Where Batman moved with predatory grace, Bruce Wayne's posture suggested someone who'd never thrown a punch in his life. Mr. Stark, Bruce said, voice lighter, tinged with inherited wealth's casual arrogance. I trust Alfred's accommodations were satisfactory. I know the manor can be drafty, So many rooms, so little time to heat them all properly. Tony recognized the performance. Immediately had delivered similar ones 1,000 times. Better than falling through a factory roof. Though I notice you've got quite the commute to your night job. Does the bat-themed insurance cover dimensional refugees? Or should I expect a bill? Bruce's expression didn't crack, but something flickered. Behind his eyes, acknowledgement of the game they were playing. My attorneys handle all unusual circumstances. Though I'll admit, your situation is unprecedented. He moved into the room with the easy confidence of someone who owned everything in sight. We should discuss your cover story. Gotham's elite will want to know why. Tony Stark, because I'm not changing your name. The similarity is too useful, has suddenly appeared at my doorstep. Let me guess, Tony said, settling into a chair that probably cost more than his first car. Mysterious business associate? Long-lost cousin? Witness protection program for billionaires. Tech consultant, Bruce replied, accepting coffee from Alfred with the practiced ease of decades-long routine. Stark Consulting, recently relocated from California after a corporate merger. You've agreed to help modernize Wayne Enterprises' energy division, publicly. Privately, you'll work in a secure lab beneath the manor, attempting to reverse your dimensional displacement while I monitor your progress. He sipped his coffee. You'll also attend tonight's gala at Wayne Tower. I need you visible, established as my associate, before Gotham's criminal element decides you're an asset to acquire. Tony's eyebrows rose. You're throwing a party less than 12 hours after discovering an interdimensional refugee? That's either incredibly confident or spectacularly reckless. It's necessary. Bruce set down his cup with precise control. Bruce Wayne throws parties while Gotham suffers. It's part of the character. Canceling would raise questions I can't afford to answer. Besides, and here the mask slipped just slightly. Batman's tactical mind showing through Wayne's playboy veneer. You need to see Gotham's power structure, the families who enable corruption, the corporations that profit from suffering, the politicians who look away while children die in crime alley. You need to understand what we're fighting before you can help fight it. Tony stood, crossing to the window, where Gotham sprawled like an infected wound across the landscape. I don't remember volunteering for your crusade. I'm here to fix my reactor, recalibrate dimensional coordinates, and get home. Not to play vigilante in a city that apparently murders hope for breakfast. You volunteered the moment you put on that armor in your world, Bruce said. And his voice had shifted, no longer playboy. Not quite Batman, but something between. Bruce Wayne without the mask. Speaking truth, he probably showed to very few. The moment you decided your technology could save people instead of killing them. That's what we do, Stark. We see suffering and we refuse to look away, even when looking costs us everything. Tony turned from the window, meeting eyes that had stared into darkness so long they'd become darkness themselves. In my world, I had a team. Friends. People who told me when I was going too far. What do you have besides a butler and a cave full of trophies from psychopaths? I have the mission. Bruce's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And occasionally, I have allies. Though trust is a luxury Gotham teaches you to abandon quickly. Trust issues, Tony said dryly. Great. My favorite. Right up there with daddy issues and martyr complexes. We should start a support group. Alfred cleared his throat delicately. If you gentlemen are quite finished measuring egos. Master Bruce has a 9 a.m. meeting with the Wayne Foundation Board, and Mr. Stark requires appropriate attire for this evening's festivities. I've taken the liberty of contacting Gotham's finest tailors. Of course you have. Tony found himself smiling despite the situation. Does Batman's support team include fashion consultation? Or is that a Wayne family extra? I prefer to think of it as ensuring our associates don't embarrass themselves publicly. Alfred replied with perfect British dryness. Master Bruce's reputation can survive most scandals. Questionable fashion choices, however, are unforgivable in Gotham society. Bruce checked his watch. Expensive, understated. Probably contained 3 hidden weapons, and the transformation back to Playboy completed itself like a switch being thrown. The car leaves for Wayne Tower at 7. Try not to blow anything up before then. Gotham's insurance rates are already astronomical. He swept from the room with the confidence of someone who'd inherited the world and never questioned his right to it, leaving Tony with Alfred and a breakfast he wasn't sure he could stomach. He's brilliant, Tony said quietly, watching Bruce's perfectly crafted exit. Terrifying, probably a few therapy sessions away from a complete breakdown. But brilliant. He's necessary, Alfred corrected, gathering dishes with practiced efficiency. Gotham requires someone willing to sacrifice themselves to its darkness. Master Bruce accepted that burden as a child. It's shaped everything he's become. The butler paused at the door. The question, Mr. Stark, is what burden you're carrying, and whether Gotham will crush you under its weight before you escape. Alone again, Tony returned to the window, watching Gotham wake under perpetually gray skies. In his world, he'd built Stark Tower as a beacon, clean energy, hope made manifest in steel and glass. Here, Wayne Tower rose like a tombstone, beautiful and cold, a monument to wealth built on a city's suffering. His arc reactor pulsed, steady and sure, a piece of home embedded in his chest. But he could feel Gotham's atmosphere already, the weight of corruption, the scent of despair, the certainty that heroism here meant something darker than he'd ever intended. 7 hours until the gala. 7 hours to prepare for an evening of handshakes and hollow conversations while criminals plotted in the shadows and Batman's network monitored every word. Tony pulled up holographic schematics from his armor's memory, projecting them across the guest room space. The Mark 85 systems hung in blue light, beautiful and broken, waiting for repairs his expertise could provide if Bruce Wayne gave him access to resources. But another thought lingered, uncomfortable and insistent. What if he couldn't go home? What if the dimensional rift was permanent, irreversible, leaving him stranded in a world where heroes became legends of fear instead of symbols of hope? Would he become like Bruce, obsessed, isolated, sacrificing humanity on the altar of necessity? Or would he find another way, proving that even in Gotham's darkness, there was room for a genius in armor who still believed technology could save people without consuming the man wielding it? The reactor pulsed in his chest, and Tony Stark got to work. Because standing still meant thinking, and thinking meant acknowledging just how alone he was in a universe that had already broken its greatest hero into something beautiful and terrible. Outside, Gotham continued its slow suicide, and Bruce Wayne prepared to smile at the people who enabled it. And Batman's computers tracked 17 active crimes across the city that would go unpunished because there were always more, always worse. Always another scream in the dark that needed answering. And in a guest room in Wayne Manor, Tony Stark began calculating how much of himself he'd have to sacrifice to survive in a world where hope was a luxury only fools could afford. The tailors arrived at 10 a.m. By noon, Tony had a wardrobe suitable for Gotham's elite and a growing suspicion that Bruce Wayne's cover identity required more effort than maintaining his armor ever had. By 2 p.m., he'd convinced Alfred to show him the lab space beneath the manor, not the Batcave, but a separate facility where Wayne Enterprises conducted private research. It had equipment, raw materials, and access to databases that made Tony's engineer heart sing even as his strategic mind cataloged every security measure designed to prevent him from accessing anything truly dangerous. Bruce trusted him exactly as far as the tracker in his arm allowed, which was to say not at all. By 5 p.m., Tony stood in front of a mirror, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than his first apartment, looking like someone who belonged at a billionaire's party while his reflection showed a man who'd fought gods and now had to smile at socialites. Showtime, he muttered to his reflection, adjusting cufflinks that probably contained surveillance equipment. Let's see how Gotham's finest react to a genius from another dimension. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, his instincts answered. Everything could go wrong. This was Gotham, after all, the city where Batman was necessary. The city that broke heroes as efficiently as it broke laws. The city Tony Stark would have to navigate without his AI, without his team, without anything except his intelligence. And an arc reactor that marked him as different in a place where different usually meant dead. He checked his reactor one last time, still functional, still humming with contained power, and headed downstairs where Bruce Wayne waited to introduce him to Gotham's elite. Batman had given him rules. Bruce Wayne would teach him how to survive. Tony Stark would have to figure out which identity killed you faster in a city built on lies. Wayne Tower's penthouse ballroom. glittered with the kind of wealth that required suffering to maintain. Crystal chandeliers refracted light across. Faces that smiled while their companies poisoned rivers. Champagne flowed like blood in Crime Alley. Expensive, wasteful, and ultimately meaningless. Tony recognized the type immediately. The elite who treated charity galas like tax deductions and moral absolution rolled into one convenient evening. Bruce Wayne worked the room like a conductor leading an orchestra, every gesture calculated, every laugh perfectly calibrated, to suggest a man who'd never had a serious thought in his life. He introduced Tony to Gotham's power, structure with the ease of someone who'd memorized every weakness, every scandal, every secret that kept these people awake at night. Tony Stark, meet Oswald Cobblepot, Bruce said, guiding Tony toward a short man whose tuxedo strained against his bulk, whose smile revealed gold teeth, and whose eyes calculated Tony's net worth in the time it took to extend his hand. Oswald owns the Iceberg Lounge, finest establishment in Gotham, though I'm afraid his taste in decor tends toward the garish. Mr. Wayne flatters me, Cobblepot said, his voice carrying the rasp of someone who'd smoked too many cigars in too many backrooms. The Penguin, Tony's mind supplied. Bruce's files had been thorough during the limo ride over. Crime boss, arms dealer, murderer hiding behind legitimate business ventures. Mr. Stark, your reputation precedes you. Tech consultant, I hear. Always room in Gotham for men who understand the value of innovation. Tony shook the offered hand, feeling calluses that suggested Cobblepot had worked his way up from nothing and killed anyone who tried to push him back down. Innovation's my specialty, though I tend to focus on applications that help people rather than hurt them. Call it a quirk. Cobblepot's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered behind those calculating eyes. Admirable. Though in Gotham, Mr. Stark, help and hurt often wear the same face. I'm sure you'll learn that quickly. Enough. He gestured with a champagne flute toward the crowd. Bruce, you must introduce Mr. Stark to the Falcons. I understand they're looking for new security systems. Someone with Mr. Stark's expertise might find the opportunity lucrative. Always thinking business, Oswald, Bruce said with a laugh that suggested he'd never considered anything serious in his life. Come along, Stark. Can't monopolize the new blood all evening. They moved through the crowd, and Tony felt the weight of scrutiny from every angle, beautiful people in expensive clothes measuring him, categorizing him, deciding whether he was prey or predator in Gotham's eternal hunt. Penguin's a crime boss, Tony muttered as they collected fresh drinks from a passing server. You're shaking hands with criminals at your own party. Welcome to Gotham, Bruce replied, his voice never losing its playboy lightness despite the darkness underneath. Half the people in this room profit from crime. The other half enable it through willful ignorance. My job, his job as Bruce Wayne, the mask implied, is to smile at them, accept their donations to the Wayne Foundation, and ensure they never suspect I'm the one who puts them in hospitals. That's deeply messed up, Tony said, accepting champagne he wouldn't drink. His arc reactor pulsed beneath his shirt, and he caught several people staring at the blue glow. Great. Subtle. As a nuclear reactor, which, technically, he was. Gotham specializes in deeply messed up. Bruce guided him toward a striking woman with red hair and a smile that promised secrets. Dr. Pamela Isley, botanist, environmentalist, and according to rumors, plant-obsessed to the point of criminal negligence. Pamela, this is Tony Stark. Try not to bore him with your crusade against industrialization. Dr. Isley's green eyes fixed on Tony with an intensity that made his instincts scream warnings. Mr. Stark, I've read about your arc reactor technology. Clean energy, sustainable, revolutionary. She leaned closer, and Tony caught the scent of flowers, too strong, almost intoxicating. Tell me, do you believe technology can save the world? Or are we simply rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic while the planet dies? I believe. Tony found his thoughts slightly fuzzy, struggled to focus past the overwhelming floral scent. That giving up means letting the bad guys win. Technology's neutral. It's what we do with it that matters. Neutral. Pamela's laugh was beautiful and slightly unhinged. Nothing is neutral, Mr. Stark. Every choice has consequences. Every machine requires resources. Every innovation costs the earth. something it can never recover. Her hand brushed his arm, and Tony felt his skin tingle. I wonder what your arc reactor cost, what you burned to build it, what died so you could live. Bruce's hand clamped on Tony's shoulder, pulling him back with subtle force. Pamela, always a pleasure, but I'm afraid I need to borrow Mr. Stark for a moment. Foundation business. You understand. He steered Tony toward the balcony, and fresh air hit like a slap, clearing fog from Tony's mind that he hadn't fully registered was there. His arc reactor pulsed faster, compensating for whatever had just happened. What the hell was that? Tony demanded, checking his vitals on the heads-up display only he could see, projected directly onto his retina. From the microtech Bruce had allowed him to integrate. I felt like I was being drugged. You were. Bruce's voice dropped to Batman's register, barely audible over the party noise. Pamela Isley is poison ivy. She uses pheromones as weapons. Normally I'd have warned you, but I needed to see if your reactor would protect you. His jaw tightened. It did. Your accelerated metabolism burned through her toxins faster than they could take hold. Useful information. You used me as a test subject? Tony grabbed Bruce's lapel, then forced himself to release it before making a scene. In my world, we call that being a terrible person. What happened to trust your allies and work together? In Gotham, we call it survival. Bruce straightened his jacket, mask never slipping despite Tony's anger. Pamela could have killed you with a kiss. I needed to know if your biology would protect you from this world's threats. Now I do. You're welcome. Tony wanted to punch him. The arc reactor in his chest wanted to blast a hole through his smug, calculating face. But movement below caught his attention, 3 figures entering the ballroom, through a service entrance, moving with purpose that didn't match the party's rhythm. Bruce saw them too. His hand moved to his cufflink, some kind of signal device. Tony realized, and his posture shifted minutely toward threat readiness. Friends of yours? Tony asked, tracking the figures with augmented vision. Enhanced muscle mass, concealed weapons, moving in formation toward the central buffet table where the wealthiest guests congregated. Scarecrow's men, Bruce said quietly. I should have expected this. Jonathan Crane loves an audience. His hand moved to another cufflink. And somewhere in the building, Batman's security systems were probably going active. Stay here. Let me handle this. Yeah, that's not happening. Tony's armor was back at the manor, but his reactor was fully charged, and he'd built emergency repulsors into the cufflinks Alfred had provided, just in case. Because Tony Stark learned from experience, and experience said parties in Gotham probably ended in violence. You need backup, and I'm the only person here who knows you're not actually a useless playboy. Bruce's eyes met his, and for a moment, the Batman assessed Tony Stark with the cold calculation of someone, deciding if a tool was worth the risk. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Stay behind me. Don't engage unless necessary. And if they release fear toxin, he produced a small breather from inside his jacket. Use this. Your reactor might protect your metabolism, but psychological fear works differently. The 3 men reached the buffet table and pulled out devices that hissed with pressurized air. Gas began flooding the ballroom, yellow-green, spreading fast, and the screaming started almost immediately as Gotham's elite saw their worst fears made manifest. A woman in diamonds collapsed, clawing at her throat as invisible insects crawled beneath her skin. A corporate executive ran for the windows, convinced he was burning alive. Oswald Cobblepot drew a concealed pistol and started firing at shadows only he could see. And standing in the center of the chaos, a figure in a burlap mask appeared from the service entrance, moving with the deliberate calm of someone who'd orchestrated this exact scenario 100 times before. Scarecrow. Good evening. Gotham's finest, the Scarecrow's voice carried through the ballroom with the theatrical flair of someone who'd studied fear as both art and science. Let me show you what you really are beneath the expensive clothes and hollow smiles. Let me show you your truth. Bruce moved, shedding the playboy like a snake shedding skin. And Tony saw the Batman emerge without cowl or armor, just training, muscle memory, and absolute certainty that he could stop this. Bruce disabled the first man with a strike to the throat, dropped the second with a leg sweep that ended in an elbow to the temple, and had the third unconscious before Tony had fully processed the transformation. But Scarecrow had already activated a secondary device. and more gas flooded the room, concentrated, targeting the center of the crowd where people trampled each other, trying to escape phantoms. Bruce, Tony shouted, and activated his cufflink repulsors, channeling arc reactor energy through micro-emitters designed for exactly this kind of emergency. The concentrated beam struck Scarecrow's device, overloading it with enough energy to fry its circuits, and the gas flow stopped. Scarecrow's masked face turned toward Tony, and even through burlap and chemical fog, Tony felt the weight of scientific curiosity meeting something it hadn't expected. "Fascinating," Scarecrow said, his voice carrying genuine interest beneath the theatrical madness. "An anomaly. A variable I didn't account for." He tilted his head, studying Tony like a specimen. "Tell me, stranger, what do you fear?" Bruce was already moving, tackling Scarecrow before he could deploy another weapon, but the damage was done. Half the ballroom was incapacitated. GCPD sirens wailed in the distance, and Tony's cover as simple tech consultant had just evaporated under the weight of glowing cufflinks and combat instincts. He pushed through the gas, breather in place, reactor compensating for trace toxins, and helped Bruce restrain Scarecrow while panicked elites fled toward exits. This close, Tony could see the Scarecrow's eyes through the mask holes. Brilliant, unhinged, utterly committed to understanding fear as humanity's fundamental truth. "You're not afraid," Scarecrow observed, struggling against Bruce's restraints. "The gas doesn't affect you." Accelerated metabolism? Foreign biology. His breathing quickened with excitement. "Let me study you. Let me understand what makes you immune. What makes you broken in a different way than Gotham's usual victims." "Hard pass on the psychoanalysis," Tony said, helping Bruce secure the villain with zip ties from Bruce's jacket. "Because of course Bruce came to his own party with restraints. Though I appreciate the interest. Really warms the heart." GCPD burst through the doors, led by a commissioner with white hair and world-weary eyes who took one look at the scene and sighed with the resignation of someone who'd seen this exact scenario too many times. "Mr. Wayne," Commissioner Gordon said, holstering his weapon. "Third attack on your events this year. Almost like someone's targeting you specifically." "Terrible luck," Bruce replied, slipping back into Playboy persona with disturbing ease despite being disheveled from combat. "Thank God for private security." Mr. Stark here had the presence of mind to disable their device. Former military contractor, you know, experience in these situations. Gordon's gaze shifted to Tony, assessing, measuring. "Mr. Stark, I'll need a statement. But first," he gestured to the ballroom filled with traumatized elite. "We need to contain this situation before the media turns it into another scandal." Tony nodded, catching his breath, reactor pulsing hard from the adrenaline. Around them, Gotham's finest were being treated for fear toxin exposure. Some still screaming at visions only they could see. Others catatonic with terror. This was Gotham, where parties ended in gas attacks, where billionaires fought criminals in tuxedos, where fear was a weapon, deployed against people who thought their wealth made them invincible. And Tony Stark had just taken his first real step into Batman's world. No armor, no AI, just his reactor and reflexes and the growing certainty that Gotham was going to demand pieces of his soul he hadn't planned on sacrificing. Bruce caught his eye across the chaos, and something passed between them, acknowledgement, perhaps, or warning. In Gotham, heroism meant getting your hands dirty. It meant fighting without glory. It meant watching people suffer and knowing you couldn't save them all. Tony's arc reactor pulsed, steady and sure, a piece of light in Gotham's darkness. But as Scarecrow was dragged away, still laughing behind his burlap mask, still muttering about fear and truth and the fascinating anomaly who'd ruined his performance, Tony wondered how long that light could last before Gotham's shadows consumed it entirely. The GCPD's interview room smelled of stale coffee and broken promises. Tony sat across from Commissioner Gordon, who'd removed his coat and rolled up his sleeves, revealing the exhaustion of a man who'd fought Gotham's darkness for decades without winning. "Let me get this straight," Gordon said, reviewing his notes with the methodical patience of someone who'd heard every lie Gotham could produce. "You're a tech consultant from California, who just happened to have the reflexes and equipment necessary to disable a fear toxin dispersal device designed by one of Gotham's most dangerous criminals. He looked up, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. And you did this at your first public appearance in the city. That about cover it. Pretty much, Tony replied, leaning back in a chair that had probably witnessed 1,000 confessions. Though I'd add incredibly lucky to that summary. Right place, right time, right combination of paranoia and engineering background. Paranoia. Gordon set down his pen. Mr. Stark, I've been a cop in Gotham for 30 years. I know what paranoia looks like. What you displayed at Wayne Tower was training. Military-grade situational awareness. He leaned forward. So let's try this again. Who are you really? And what brings you to Gotham? Tony met Gordon's gaze and saw something he respected. A man searching for truth in a city, built on lies, refusing to stop even when the answers hurt. He thought about lying, maintaining the cover story, playing the role Bruce had assigned him. But Gordon deserved better. And Tony was tired of masks, even though he'd just started wearing this one. I'm exactly who Bruce Wayne says I am, Tony said carefully. A consultant with a background in defense. Technology who's relocating to Gotham for business reasons. What I'm not is helpless. He tapped his chest, where the arc reactor glowed beneath his shirt. Medical condition. Requires unique power source. Also makes me unusually resilient to certain environmental factors. Gordon's eyes fixed on the glow. That's not standard medical equipment. No, Tony admitted. It's custom. Built it myself after an incident that would have killed anyone else. Turns out being stubborn and having a genius-level IQ gives you options when conventional medicine fails. And Bruce Wayne hired you despite this. Unusual condition? Bruce Wayne sees value where others see liability, Tony said, which was true enough. Plus, my expertise in clean energy tech is exactly what Wayne Enterprises needs. The arc reactor, he gestured to his chest, is proof of concept. Sustainable power on a personal scale. Imagine what that could do for Gotham's infrastructure. Gordon studied him for a long moment, and Tony could see the commissioner's mind working through possibilities, weighing truths against half-truths, deciding how much to push and how much to accept. Mr. Wayne has a habit of surrounding himself with unusual people, Gordon finally said. I've learned not to ask too many questions about his associates, mostly because the answers tend to complicate my job. He stood, gathering his notes. You're free to go. But a word of advice. Gotham has a way of destroying people who think they can fix it. Whatever Bruce Wayne hired you for, whatever you think you can accomplish here, his expression hardened. Remember that this city eats heroes for breakfast and doesn't even bother with the bones. Tony stood, extending his hand. Commissioner, I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to survive and maybe build something useful along the way. That different enough from the usual pattern. Gordon shook his hand, grip firm. We'll see, Mr. Stark. We'll see. Bruce was waiting in the limousine outside GCPD headquarters, having changed from his damaged tuxedo into something casual but still expensive. Alfred sat in the driver's seat, monitoring the street with the alertness of someone who'd been the getaway driver for Batman's operations longer than Tony had been alive. Gordon's suspicious, Tony said, sliding into leather seats that probably cost more than a year's rent. But he's also pragmatic. He'll watch me, but he won't push. Yet, Jim Gordon is the best cop Gotham has ever had. Bruce replied, his voice somewhere between Wayne and Batman, the private tone he used when masks weren't necessary. He's also one of 3 people in this city I trust completely. If he's suspicious of you, it's because you gave him reason to be. Disabling scarecrows. Device with technology that doesn't officially exist draws attention. Would you have preferred I let everyone suffocate in fear toxin? Tony's frustration bled through. I'm not going to watch people die when I can stop it. That's not who I am. That's exactly who you are, Bruce countered. Which is why you're dangerous in Gotham. Heroes who refuse to let people die make themselves targets. They give criminals leverage. They become predictable. He leaned forward slightly, intensity radiating despite the casual clothes. Scarecrow already knows you're unusual. By tomorrow, every criminal network in Gotham will have your description. The anomaly with the glowing chest who can disable gas weapons. You've painted a target on yourself. Then I'll handle it. Tony's arc reactor pulsed, casting blue shadows across the limo's interior. I've been a target before. Survived terrorists, gods, aliens, and my own mistakes. Gotham's criminals don't scare me. They should. Bruce's voice dropped to Batman's register. In your world, villains want power, money, revenge, things you can understand and counter. In Gotham, they want chaos. The Joker kills because murder is funny. Scarecrow poisons people to study fear. Poison Ivy murders corporate executives because plants are more important than human life. His jaw tightened. They're not motivated by logic you can engineer around. They're broken in ways that make them unpredictable, deadly. Alfred's voice came from the driver's seat, cultured and calm. Perhaps, Master Bruce, rather than frightening Mr. Stark with horror stories, you might explain how he can protect himself, since it appears he'll be staying in Gotham for the foreseeable future. Bruce sat back, and Tony caught a flicker of something across his face. Concern, perhaps, or the weight of responsibility for bringing another person into his war. Alfred's right. You need training. Real training, not just combat reflexes from your world. Gotham-specific threat assessment, criminal psychology, and most importantly, fixed Tony with a stare that permitted no argument. You need to understand when to engage and when to disappear. Disappearing isn't my strong suit, Tony admitted. I'm more of a make-a-dramatic entrance kind of guy. Has to do with the ego issues we discussed. Then you'll learn. Bruce pulled out a tablet, displaying schematics that made Tony's engineer heart race. Your armor is in my lab. I've analyzed its systems, identified weaknesses in how it operates in this dimension. The arc reactor's energy signature is detectable by anyone with the right equipment, which means Lex Luthor in Metropolis has already noted your presence, and probably Scarecrow's network in Gotham. He swiped to another screen. You need stealth modifications, signature dampening, protocols for operating in an environment where magic exists and can bypass technological defenses. Tony studied the schematics, seeing solutions he hadn't considered, improvements his own genius could have reached, but Batman's paranoia had achieved faster. You want to rebuild my armor, make it suitable for Gotham. I want you to survive long enough to get home, Bruce corrected. Because despite your technology and your intelligence, you're operating with assumptions that don't apply here. In your world, heroes announce themselves. They fight in daylight. They trust that exposure brings accountability. His voice hardened. In Gotham, exposure gets you killed. The shadows aren't just aesthetic, they're survival. The limousine pulled through Wayne Manor's gates, and Tony saw the estate in new context, a fortress disguised as aristocratic luxury. Every angle calculated for defense, every entrance monitored by systems that would make S.H.I.E.L.D. jealous. When do we start? Tony asked, committing to the path that had been inevitable since he'd agreed to wear Batman's tracker. The training, the modifications, the whole learn to operate in Nightmare City curriculum. Tonight, Bruce said. Tomorrow you're meeting with Wayne Enterprises, board to establish your cover identity formally, which means tonight is your only window for 3 days to work uninterrupted. He checked his watch, definitely contained weapons. Tony was certain now. Scarecrow's attack accomplished one thing. It proved you're useful in a crisis. But useful isn't the same as ready. And Gotham has a way of testing people when they're least prepared. Alfred parked the limousine, and they entered the manor through a service entrance that led directly to the elevator accessing the cave. Tony felt the weight of stone above him, the isolation of descending into Batman's sanctum, and understood with sudden clarity what Bruce had been trying to tell him. In Gotham, heroes worked from the shadows not because it was dramatic, but because the light would kill them. The Batcave materialized around them. Computers, vehicles, training equipment, and in the center, Tony's Mark 85 armor standing like a sentinel from another world. Its crimson and gold seemed almost garish in the cave's shadows. Too bright, too bold, too much of everything Gotham's darkness required heroes to abandon. We'll start with threat assessment, Bruce said, moving to the computer. Files opened across multiple screens. The Joker's psychological profile, Scarecrow's fear toxin variations, Poison Ivy's pheromone capabilities, Two-Face probability obsessions, the Riddler's compulsive need to prove intellectual superiority, Gotham's rogues gallery, each one broken in unique and deadly ways. Tony approached his armor, running fingers across metal that had survived battles against gods. In his world, this armor meant hope, protection, the belief that technology, guided by conscience, could save people. In Gotham, It was a liability. A target. A promise that he didn't understand the rules of this new nightmare. Question, Tony said, turning from the armor to where Bruce stood silhouetted against the screens. If Gotham's so terrible, if the darkness always wins, if heroes get broken or killed, why do you keep fighting? What's the point of Batman if the mission is impossible? Bruce was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades spent in this cave, chasing ghosts he'd never catch. Because someone has to stand in the darkness, he said. Someone has to refuse to let it win, even when winning is impossible, even when the cost is everything, even when you know the mission will outlive you and the city will still be broken when you're gone. He turned, and his eyes reflected computer, light like an animal's. That's what Gotham demands. Stark. Not victory, not success, just the refusal to surrender, the willingness to sacrifice yourself for a city that will never thank you and barely notices. You're bleeding. Tony looked at his armor, then at Batman's vehicles, then at the man who'd built an empire on fear and dedication and the traumatic certainty that he could never save everyone, but had to try anyway. That's the most depressing mission statement I've ever heard, Tony said. And I once had to explain to Congress why I wouldn't weaponize my technology after using it to stop an alien invasion. You've taken glass half empty to new extremes. Welcome to Gotham, Bruce replied, and something that might have been dark humor flickered across his face. Now stop philosophizing and start learning. First lesson, Scarecrow's fear toxin has 17 known variants, each one designed to exploit different psychological vulnerabilities. Your reactor protected your metabolism, but not your mind. If he adapts his formula, I'm screwed, Tony finished. Got it. So we need to develop counteragents, psychological protocols, maybe meditation techniques that sound ridiculous but actually work because fighting with your mind is apparently a Gotham specialty. Exactly. Bruce pulled up chemical formulas that made Tony's chemistry background struggle to keep up. Second lesson, the Joker. He'll hear about you within 48 hours. When he does, he'll test you. Not because you're a threat, but because you're new. A toy he hasn't played with. And his idea of play involves mass murder and philosophical questions about morality that you won't want to answer. Tony's arc reactor pulsed faster. What kind of questions? The kind where the wrong answer gets innocent people killed, Bruce said flatly. The kind where there is no right answer, only choices about who dies. The kind that break heroes who think their technology or intelligence can solve moral absolutes. He met Tony's eyes. The Joker exists to prove that chaos is the only truth. That one bad day can destroy anyone. That underneath our masks, we're all one decision away from becoming him. That's insane, Tony said. Yes, Bruce agreed. That's exactly what he is. And you'll have to face him eventually. So we need you ready to survive the encounter, without becoming what he wants. You to be another broken hero proving his thesis. Tony pulled up a chair in front of the computer screens, settling in for what he suspected would be the longest night of his life. Around him, the Batcave hummed with technology dedicated to war against chaos. His armor stood sentinel, waiting for modifications that would transform it from beacon to shadow. And Bruce Wayne, Batman, began the education that would determine whether Tony Stark survived Gotham or became another cautionary tale about heroes who thought they could save a city that didn't want salvation. Lesson 3, Bruce said, pulling up footage of a purple suit and a smile that promised madness. Never underestimate what fear can make you do. Even you, Stark. Especially you. The Joker's laughter echoed through archived footage, and Tony's arc reactor pulsed in rhythm with his accelerating heartbeat, and Gotham's darkness settled around them both like a promise of suffering to come. Oracle's voice crackled through the cave's speakers at 2 a.m., cutting through Bruce's lecture on Clayface morphogenic properties. Batman, we have a situation. Riddler's broadcast just went live across every screen in Gotham, and he's specifically asking for your new friend. Tony looked up from the chemical formulas he'd been studying, exhaustion making the numbers blur. Me? I've been in town for 36 hours. How does he even know I exist? Because Edward Nygma is obsessed with proving his intellectual superiority, Bruce said, already moving to the main console where a green question mark filled the screen. And you represent a challenge he can't resist, an unknown variable, potentially equal intelligence. Perfect opportunity to demonstrate he's still the smartest person in any room. The Riddler's face appeared on screen, sharp features, manic energy barely contained behind rimless glasses, and a smile that suggested he'd already won a game. Tony hadn't realized they were playing. "Good evening, Gotham." Riddler's voice carried theatrical delight. Or should I say, good morning? Time becomes so fluid when you're constructing the perfect puzzle. Speaking of puzzles, his eyes seem to stare directly through the camera. "We have a new player in our fair city. A man of iron, or so the whispers say. A genius from elsewhere. Who thinks his technology makes him special?" The smile widened. "Let's test that hypothesis, shall we?" The screen split, showing multiple locations across Gotham: a hospital, a school, a bridge, and what looked like Arkham Asylum's East Wing. "4 locations," Riddler continued, counting on his fingers with exaggerated precision. "4 bombs. 4 riddles. Solve them all in 3 hours, and everyone lives. Fail even one, and Gotham learns what happens when inferior minds play games. Designed for intellectual giants." He leaned closer to the camera. "And just to make it interesting, this game is for Mr. Tony Stark specifically. Batman, if you interfere directly, I detonate all 4 immediately. Consider it a entrance exam for Gotham's newest resident." The broadcast cut to a timer: 2 hours 59 minutes and 57 seconds. 2 hours 59 minutes and 56 seconds. "He's serious." Oracle's voice was tight with tension. "I'm reading explosive signatures at all 4 locations. Civilian presence. Hospital has 73 patients and staff. School has a night security team of 4. Bridge has 17 vehicles currently crossing, and Arkham," she paused, "has exactly 1 person. Dr. Harleen Quinzel, doing late-night evaluations." Harleen. Bruce's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but Tony caught it. Worry, real concern beneath the tactical assessment. He's using her as bait. She doesn't know what she's walked into. Who is she? Tony was already moving toward his armor, adrenaline burning through exhaustion. Psychiatrist. New to Arkham. She's been treating the Joker. Thinks she's making progress with him. Bruce's voice carried the weight of someone who knew exactly how that story ended. "She's brilliant, compassionate, and completely unprepared for what these people can do to your mind. Then we save her," Tony said, his armor beginning its assembly sequence. "Along with everyone else. For locations, 3 hours. We can do this." "No." Bruce grabbed Tony's shoulder before he could step into the armor. "We can't. That's the point of Riddler's game. For locations, 2 of us, 3 hours. The math doesn't work. We have to prioritize. Make choices about who lives." His eyes burned with intensity. Behind the cowl he'd donned the moment, Oracle called. "This is lesson 4. Gotham forces impossible decisions. You can't save everyone, and trying to will get more people killed." Tony pulled away from Bruce's grip. "That's defeatist. There has to be a solution. There's always a solution if you're smart enough to find it." "That's exactly what Riddler wants you to think," Bruce said. "He's testing whether you understand Gotham's fundamental rule. Heroism here means choosing who to save, not saving everyone. Accept that now, or his game will break you. Then maybe Gotham's rules need to change." Tony's arc reactor flared brighter, his determination crystallizing into action. "Oracle, send me the first riddle. Bruce, you take whatever location you think I can't handle. We split up, we move fast, and we solve his puzzles before his timer runs out. I didn't survive Thanos by accepting impossible odds. I survived by making my own odds." Silence filled the cave for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then Bruce turned to the computer, and Tony heard something he hadn't expected, the faintest hint of approval. "Oracle, send Stark the hospital riddle," Batman said, his cape swirling as he moved toward the Batmobile. "I'll take Arkham." Nightwing, he tapped his cowl. "Activating comms. You're nearest the bridge. Get there now." Red Robin, the school is yours. We have 3 hours to prove Edward Nygma isn't as clever as he thinks. So we're doing this. Tony's armor sealed around him. HUD coming online with targeting systems and threat assessments. The impossible mission? The defiance of mathematical probability. Batman climbed into his vehicle, and the engine roared to life, a sound designed to terrify criminals and inspire hope in equal measure. We're doing this because you haven't learned when to accept defeat, which either makes you incredibly stubborn or incredibly stupid. Both, Tony confirmed, repulsors engaging as he lifted off the cave floor. Definitely both. It's kind of my thing. Oracle, route him to Gotham General. Batman said, the Batmobile screaming toward the cave's exit. And Stark, the Dark Knight's voice carried through the calm. When you solve Riddler's puzzle. And you will solve it because he designed it to be solvable. Remember that. He's not testing your intelligence. He's testing whether you can handle the answer. Then Batman was gone, tearing through Gotham's streets toward Arkham and the psychiatrist who didn't know she'd become bait in a game designed to prove heroes were just as breakable as everyone else. Tony rocketed through the cave's upper exit, armor screaming through night air toward Gotham General Hospital, where 73 people waited to discover if the genius from another dimension was smart enough to save them. Oracle's voice fed him the first riddle. Through his calm, I am taken from mine and shut in a wooden case, from which I am never released. Yet I am used by almost every person. What am I? Pencil lead. Tony answered immediately, his mind processing the classic riddle even as his sensors painted the hospital in thermal imaging. Graphite. Too easy. Where's the bomb? That's the surface riddle, Oracle replied, her voice tight with focus. The real answer unlocks the location. Riddler doesn't use classics unless they point to something specific. Think about the hospital. Think about what a pencil represents in a medical context. Tony's mind raced, pulling up hospital schematics. Oracle was feeding to his HUD. Pencil. Writing. Records. Medical charts. Case files written by hand before electronic systems. Medical records, Tony said, adjusting trajectory toward the hospital's administrative wing. Old files, probably paper-based archives in the basement, where they store pre-digital patient histories. Basement level 3, Oracle confirmed. And Tony, Riddler's riddles are never just about location. They're about meaning. What does destroying medical records actually destroy? Tony's repulsors flared as he descended toward the hospital, finding a skylight that would grant access without alarming civilians. Identity, history, proof that people existed, that their treatments mattered, that their suffering was documented and real. Exactly, Oracle said quietly. Edward Nygma is telling you that he can erase people, make them meaningless, reduce lives to forgotten data points that nobody will miss. That's his real riddle. Do individual lives matter? Or are we all just information waiting to be deleted? Tony crashed through the skylight, armor-absorbing impact as he landed in a hospital corridor, where a night nurse screamed and dropped her tablet. Sorry. Superhero emergency. Carry on with your excellent medical work. He blazed toward the basement stairs, HUD tracking the explosive signature Oracle had isolated. 2 minutes of flight time from the cave. 1 minute to solve the riddle, which left 2 hours 56 minutes and 14 seconds on the clock. Plenty of time, if Riddler's bomb was straightforward. Except Riddler was never straightforward. The medical records room was vast, decades of paper files and climate-controlled storage, each box representing lives treated, saved, or lost in Gotham's endless cycle of violence. And sitting in the center of it all, a device that made Tony's arc reactor pulse with recognition. Not just a bomb. A quantum incendiary, technology that shouldn't exist in this universe. That matched the energy signature of the device that had brought Tony to Gotham in the first place. Oracle, are you seeing this? Tony approached the device carefully, scanners analyzing its construction. This isn't normal explosive technology. This is dimensional science. Riddler somehow got his hands on quantum mechanics that my own world is still theorizing about. How is that possible? Oracle's voice carried the edge of someone confronting a threat that violated known rules. It's not. Unless Tony's mind made connections at light speed. Unless my arrival created a quantum signature that someone reverse-engineered. Someone saw the dimensional rift, captured data, and built this as proof of concept. His hands moved over the device, careful not to trigger proximity sensors. Riddler's not just testing my intelligence. He's proving he can understand my technology, that he's already learned from my presence. Can you disarm it? Oracle asked. Tony studied the device, seeing elegant engineering wrapped in theatrical presentation. Wires color-coded in patterns that referenced Riddler's question mark motif. a central processor that pulsed with green light, and a timer display showing 2 hours 54 minutes and 7 seconds. Yes, Tony said, hands steady despite the implications. But Oracle, this isn't just about disarming a bomb. This is Riddler telling me that he's going to study my technology, understand it, and weaponize it against Gotham. Every device I build, every innovation I introduce, he'll reverse engineer it and make it deadlier. Then disarm it and worry about the implications later, Oracle commanded. 73 people are counting on you. Tony's fingers flew across the device, bypassing security protocols with the ease of someone who'd built and disarmed weapons technology for decades. But his mind kept circling the larger problem. Riddler had built this in less than 36 hours, which meant his intelligence was genuinely comparable to Tony's own, which meant Gotham really did have criminals whose minds were weapons as dangerous as any technology. The device deactivated with a soft chime, and the timer froze at 2 hours 51 minutes and 33 seconds. Hospital clear, Tony reported, already launching toward the exit. Oracle, where do you need me next? Nightwing has the bridge handled, Oracle replied. Red Robin is still working the school bomb. But Batman, her voice tightened with worry, hasn't reported from Arkham, and his vitals just spiked. Elevated heart rate, stress hormones. He's engaged in combat. Combat. Tony adjusted trajectory, armor screaming toward Arkham Asylum across the river. With who? Riddler. I don't know. But Tony, Arkham is where Gotham keeps its worst criminals. If Riddler's game was just about testing you, he wouldn't have sent Batman there. Oracle paused. Unless the real trap isn't the bomb. It's whatever Batman walks into trying to save Dr. Quinzel. Tony poured power into his repulsors, the Mark 85 achieving speeds that Bruce's modifications had optimized for Gotham's atmospheric conditions. Below him, the city sprawled like an infected wound. And ahead, Arkham Asylum rose against storm clouds, a gothic nightmare that housed every broken mind Gotham had ever produced. And somewhere inside, Batman was fighting something that had elevated his stress response despite decades of training designed to eliminate fear. I'm 90 seconds out, Tony said, checking weapon systems. Oracle, get me building schematics. If Batman's in trouble, I need to know the fastest way to his location. Tony, Oracle's voice carried warning. Arkham isn't just a building. It's where Gotham's darkness lives, where the criminals aren't just evil, they're broken in ways that make them contagious. Going in there, you're not just risking your life. You're risking your mind. Yeah, well, Tony said, Arkham looming larger in his vision, its walls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. Story of my life. FRIDAY, if you were online. This is where you tell me my plan is terrible. Static answered him, his AI still offline, still fighting Batman's intrusion protocols, leaving Tony alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that Riddler's game was about to become something much worse than 4 bombs in 3 hours. Because in Gotham, the real danger was never the puzzles you could solve. It was the answers you found when you succeeded. Arkham Asylum didn't just house criminals, it devoured hope. Tony's sensors painted the building in thermal imaging as he descended toward its eastern wing, and what he saw made his arc reactor pulse faster. Heat signatures scattered in chaotic patterns, cell doors standing open, and in the central corridor, 2 figures locked in combat that moved too fast for normal human capability. Batman and someone else. Someone whose thermal signature flickered between human and something that registered as ambient temperature. Clayface, Tony's mind, supplied from Bruce's earlier briefing. Shapeshifter, virtually indestructible. One of Gotham's nightmare creatures that shouldn't exist, but did anyway. Tony crashed through a reinforced window, his armor absorbing impact and probably violating 17 building codes, and landed in a corridor that smelled of antiseptic, despair, and something chemical his sensors couldn't identify. Emergency lighting cast everything in red, and from the open cells lining the hallway, laughter echoed. Not one voice. Dozens. Criminals watching the show, entertained by Batman's struggle. Stark, what are you doing here? Batman's voice came through gritted teeth as he dodged a tendril of living clay that had been Clayface's arm seconds before. I told you that you'd handle it, yeah? I got that message. Tony interrupted, repulsors charging. Except your vitals say you're getting your ass kicked. Oracle's worried, and I have this terrible habit of helping teammates even when they claim they don't need it. He fired a concentrated repulsor blast at Clayface mass, and the creature's torso exploded backward in a spray of brown sludge that immediately began reforming. You can't kill Clayface with energy weapons, Batman said, rolling away from another strike and deploying something from his utility belt that looked like a freeze grenade. His molecular structure absorbs kinetic impact and reforms. You need to. The grenade detonated, coating Clayface in ice that held for exactly 3 seconds before cracking apart. The shapeshifter laughed, a sound like wet earth sliding, and reformed into something larger, more monstrous. Tendril arms reaching for both heroes, with the patience of something that had already won countless battles through attrition. Immobilize his movement or disrupt his cellular cohesion, Batman finished, breathing hard, neither of which you're equipped for. Right, because I definitely didn't spend decades building suits designed to counter impossible threats. Tony's HUD ran calculations, analyzing Clayface's molecular structure, with sensors designed to understand alien technology. His clay is held together by electrical impulses mimicking neural patterns. Disrupt the signal, and his mass loses coherent form. He recalibrated his arc reactor's output, channeling energy through his armors. Surface in a pattern designed to generate electromagnetic interference. Then he closed distance with Clayface and grabbed one of the creature's tendrils, letting his entire suit become a conductor. The electromagnetic pulse discharged directly into Clayface's mass, and the creature's scream was distinctly human beneath the monster form. His body convulsed, coherence failing, and for 3 seconds he was just clay, inert, formless, scattered across the corridor like a child's abandoned art project. That won't hold him long, Batman said, already moving toward the elevator shaft, maybe 30 seconds before his neural patterns re-establish. We need to find Quinzel and the bomb before an explosion rocked the eastern wing, and Tony's armor absorbed shrapnel from a blast that had originated 2 floors above. The timer, his mind registered. They'd been too focused on Clayface, too distracted by the immediate threat, and now. Oracle, report. Batman's voice carried an edge Tony hadn't heard before. Not quite panic. Something colder. Calculated fury at himself for miscalculating. Bomb detonated early. Oracle's voice was tight. East Wing, Level 3. Structural damage significant. I'm reading. She paused, and Tony heard her breath catch. I'm reading 1 life sign in the blast radius. Female. Vitals critical. Batman was already moving, grapple line firing toward the damaged floors above. And Tony followed on repulsor power. Armor sensors tracking the life sign through dust and debris. They found her in what had been an evaluation room. Dr. Harleen Quinzel. Blonde hair matted with blood, pinned beneath a collapsed beam that Tony's sensors said weighed approximately 800 pounds. Her eyes were open, conscious but fading, and when she saw Batman, something like relief crossed her face. Batman, she whispered, voice barely audible over the settling debris. Joker told me you'd come. He said you always come for the innocent ones. Said it was your weakness. She coughed, blood on her lips. Was he right? Don't talk, Batman said, already assessing the beam, calculating angles and forces. Stark, I need your strength enhancement. On 3, we lift together. Oracle, ambulance to Arkham, trauma team on standby. Tony positioned himself opposite Batman, armor's servos whining as they prepared to lift weight they hadn't been designed for. On 3, 1, 2, they lifted, and the beam rose inch by agonizing inch. Tony's arc reactor, screaming as it channeled power through muscle enhancement systems. Batman's armor, less advanced but brutally efficient, groaned under the strain. And Tony saw veins standing out on Bruce's neck beneath the cowl, saw the absolute refusal to fail etched into every line of his body. The beam cleared Harleen's torso, and she gasped, drawing breath that was probably collapsing a punctured lung. Batman held the weight steady while Tony gently pulled her free, his armor's medical scanners painting a devastating picture: internal bleeding, possible spinal damage, compound fractures in her left leg, shock setting in fast. Stay with me, Dr. Quinzel, Tony said, his armor systems already deploying. Emergency medical protocols he'd built. After watching too many teammates bleed out. Coagulants. Pain management. Stabilization fields designed to keep organs from shutting down. You're going to be fine. We've got you. Joker, she whispered, eyes unfocusing. He said I'd understand eventually. About the joke. About how funny everything is when you stop caring who lives and dies. A tear tracked through the blood on her face. I don't want to understand. Please. I don't want to become like him. You won't, Batman said. And for the first time since Tony had met him, Bruce Wayne's voice carried something other than tactical assessment. Compassion, maybe, or the memory of his own fear of becoming the thing he fought. The fact that you're afraid of it means you won't. Hold on. Help is coming. But she was fading, and Tony's sensors were screaming warnings about catastrophic organ failure, and the nearest hospital was 7 minutes away, and 7 minutes was approximately 6 minutes too long. Bruce, Tony said quietly, using his first name deliberately, demanding attention. She's not going to make it to a hospital. Her spleen's ruptured, liver's lacerated, and she's bleeding internally at a rate that's incompatible with consciousness in approximately 90 seconds. Batman's jaw clenched behind the cowl. What are you suggesting? My arc reactor. Tony's hands moved to his chest plate, beginning the unlocking sequence he'd sworn never to use except in absolute emergency. It can generate a localized field that will keep her cells oxygenated even as her cardiovascular system fails. But it requires direct contact, skin to skin, and it'll drain my reactor to dangerously low levels. You'll be vulnerable, Batman said flatly. Without full reactor power, your armor becomes dead weight. You'll be trapped here, defenseless, while Arkham's inmates are loose and Riddler's game is still active. Yeah. Tony met Batman's eyes through their respective faceplates. I know. Do it anyway. For 3 seconds, Batman assessed, calculating risk, weighing one life against tactical advantage, fighting the equation that Gotham demanded heroes solve 1,000 times. Who do you save when you can't save everyone? Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. Do it. I'll hold the perimeter. Tony's chest plate retracted, exposing the arc reactor's glow, and he pressed it directly against Harleen's chest, channeling energy in patterns designed to sustain life when biology failed. The reactor's light dimmed from blue to pale white as power diverted, and Tony felt his armor systems begin shutting down one by one. Flight, weapons, targeting, all sacrificed to keep one psychiatrist's heart beating. Around them, Arkham's shadows pressed closer. From open cells, voices called out, some mocking, some curious, some promising violence with the certainty of predators who'd found wounded prey. Well, a voice said from the darkness, high-pitched and crackling with madness that felt like fingernails on a chalkboard. Looks like Christmas came early. A bat without his gadgets and a tin man without his power, all wrapped up with a dying girl on top. This is better than TV. Tony's HUD flickered, barely functional, but managed to identify the thermal signature emerging from a cell marked maximum isolation. Do not open under any circumstances. Purple suit. Green hair. Smile that promised the universe was one elaborate joke and everyone was the punchline. The Joker had entered the game. Batman stepped between Tony and the Joker, cape spreading like wings. Body language promising violence that would make previous encounters look gentle. Jack, you're supposed to be sedated. Supposed to be sure. The Joker giggled, pulling a knife from somewhere, twirling it like a conductor's baton. But Riddler's little game created such wonderful chaos. Guards running everywhere, electronic locks failing, and silly old me with nothing better to do than escape and find out what all the fuss was about. He tilted his head, studying the scene like an art critic examining a masterpiece. And oh, Batsy, this is gorgeous. You, trying to save one insignificant girl. Him, the knife pointed at Tony, burning himself out like a candle because he hasn't learned that saving people just means you get to watch them die slower. Walk away, Joker, Batman said, voice dropping to a register that promised death despite his no-kill rule. This isn't your game. This is Riddler's. Eddie's games are boring. The Joker did a theatrical spin, knife tracing arcs in the air. Puzzles and riddles, and look how smart I am. But this, he gestured at Tony. At Harleen. At the tableau of heroism and desperation. This is art. The billionaire. Genius learning that his technology can't save everyone. The Dark Knight forced to choose between protecting his new friend or hunting me through Arkham's halls. He giggled again, the sound crawling under Tony's skin. What's the punchline going to be, Bats? Does the girl die? Do you break your rule and finally kill me? Does Iron Man learn that Gotham eats heroes like him for appetizers? Tony's reactor pulsed weakly, barely maintaining Harleen's vitals, and his armor was dead weight. Now, 2,000 pounds of inert metal that would crush him if he lost concentration. Bruce, I can't hold her much longer. Reactor's at 15%. When it hits 10, my own heart stops. I know. Batman's hand moved to his utility belt, selecting something. Joker, last warning. Leave now, or I put you down. And yes, I know you've been wanting to push me to that point for years. Today's not that day. The Joker's smile somehow widened. But maybe it is. Maybe today's the day you finally get the joke. He lunged, knife aimed not at Batman, but at Tony, at the vulnerable genius with his chest plate open, at the easy kill that would prove heroes always lose in the end. Batman moved with the speed of someone who'd spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. The projectile from his utility belt, some kind of expanding foam that, hardened on contact, caught the Joker mid-lunge and pinned him to the wall in a cocoon that would have been comical if the clown Prince's laughter wasn't still, echoing off stone walls. The joke, Batman said, standing over the immobilized Joker, is that you think chaos is the answer. That breaking people proves something profound. But all it proves is that you're empty. Avoid pretending to be philosophy, and I'll spend my entire life making sure you never win. The Joker's eyes gleamed behind the hardened foam. Oh, Batsy, I've already won. Look at your new friend. Look at what Gotham's doing to him. Give it a month, and he'll be just as broken as the rest of us. One bad day, that's all it takes. And Gotham has so many bad days. Sirens wailed in the distance, and GCPD tactical teams stormed the eastern wing with the efficiency of people who'd done this drill too many times. The paramedics reached them within seconds, professional and focused, taking Harleen from Tony's weakening grip and replacing his makeshift life support with professional equipment. Tony's reactor climbed back to 20% as he released the connection, and his armor systems began restarting one by one. He collapsed against debris, exhausted. Reactor burning in his chest like a star going nova. Red Robin reports school is clear. Oracle's voice came through comms. Gentle despite the circumstances. Nightwing has the bridge secured. All 4 bombs are disarmed. Civilian casualties, 0 fatalities. 1 critical injury. Dr. Quinzel is stable and en route to Gotham General. Riddler, Batman asked, watching as GCPD hauled the Joker away in restraints designed to hold metahumans. No sign, Oracle admitted. He broadcast his success scenario and disappeared. But Batman, his timer was set to explode that bomb regardless of whether you solved the riddle. The Arkham location was never winnable. It was designed to test what you'd sacrifice trying to save one person. Batman was silent, processing the manipulation, the unnecessary cruelty of a game designed not to test intelligence but morality. Then he turned to Tony, who was still slumped against debris, arc reactor glowing weakly through his exposed chest. You saved her, Bruce said, knowing it would leave you vulnerable, knowing it violated every tactical principle we'd discussed. You saved one person and risked everything. Yeah. Tony's voice was hoarse with exhaustion. Because that's what heroes do. Even in Gotham. Especially in Gotham. You can calculate odds all you want. But if you stop trying to save people because the math doesn't work, you've already lost. Bruce extended a hand, pulling Tony to his feet with surprising gentleness. Around them, GCPD processed the crime scene, and Arkham's inmates were being secured back in their cells, and Gotham continued its endless cycle of violence, interrupted by brief moments of heroism. Lesson learned, Bruce said quietly, and Tony couldn't tell if it was approval or resignation in his voice. You don't adapt to Gotham. You force Gotham to adapt to you. Reckless, dangerous, stupid, but effective, Tony countered, retracting his chest plate as his reactor stabilized. Your contingency plans are brilliant, Bruce. But sometimes you need someone who refuses to accept impossible odds. Someone who looks at the trolley problem and decides to build a better trolley. Batman almost smiled. Almost. Get back to the cave. Alfred will have medical supplies waiting, and your armor needs repairs. Tomorrow, we deal with the fact that Riddler learned your quantum technology exists, and Joker knows you're the weakness I didn't know I had. Tomorrow, Tony agreed, limping toward the exit where the Batmobile waited, gleaming and brutal in emergency lighting. Tonight, we saved everyone. Even in Gotham, that counts for something. It counts for everything, Bruce said, so quietly Tony almost missed it. That's why we keep fighting. Why we refuse to stop, even when the city breaks us. Because every life saved is a victory against the darkness. Even if the darkness comes back tomorrow. They drove through Gotham's streets in silence. Two billionaire geniuses who'd chosen different paths to the same destination, refusing to let evil win. One through fear and preparation. One through hope and innovation. Both bleeding, exhausted, and absolutely unwilling to quit. Behind them, Arkham Asylum settled back into its restless sleep, and the Joker's laughter echoed through maximum security cells, and Riddler reviewed footage of his game with the satisfaction of someone who'd proven his hypothesis. Heroes could be broken. They just required the right application of pressure. But Tony Stark's arc reactor glowed steady in the darkness, and Batman's cape swept through Gotham's shadows. And somewhere in the night, a psychiatrist named Harleen Quinzel breathed on her own, saved by technology and determination and the refusal to accept that math alone determined who lived and died. Gotham's darkness was eternal, but so, apparently, was the light that heroes carried into it. The Wayne Enterprises boardroom occupied the top floor of Wayne Tower, where Gotham's skyline stretched like a warning across floor-to-ceiling windows. Tony stood in a suit that cost more than most people's cars, arc reactor visible as a blue glow beneath his silk shirt, and faced 12 board members who looked at him like a quarterly earnings report that didn't add up. Mr. Stark, Lucius Fox began, adjusting glasses that probably cost more than Tony's first workshop. Your credentials are impressive. MIT graduate, multiple patents in energy and propulsion technology, former defense contractor who transitioned to clean energy initiatives. He set down the tablet containing Tony's fabricated history. But Wayne Enterprises has its own R&D division. What exactly do we gain from this consultation? Tony smiled, channeling every ounce of charisma he'd used to sell weapons to generals and arc reactor technology to skeptical investors. Mr. Fox, you're right to be skeptical. Your R&D division is excellent. I've reviewed the patents, studied your energy initiatives, and I'm genuinely impressed by the miniaturization you've achieved in portable power systems. He tapped his chest, drawing attention to the reactor. But I'm not here to compete with your existing programs. I'm here to introduce technology that's approximately 17 years ahead of anything currently on the market. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s with the calculated gaze of someone who'd fought her way through corporate hierarchies, leaned forward. 17 years is a significant claim, Mr. Stark. Can you substantiate it? Tony glanced at Bruce, who sat at the head of the table in full CEO mode. Expression carefully neutral. They'd rehearsed this presentation for 2 hours that morning, with Alfred providing coffee and sardonic commentary about the absurdity of pretending. Tony's technology came from normal human innovation. I can, Tony said, pulling a small device from his pocket, something he and Bruce had built in the cave, using Tony's arc reactor principles combined with Wayne Tech aesthetics. He placed it on the conference table, and the device activated, projecting holographic schematics into the air. This is a miniaturized fusion reactor, capable of producing 1 gigawatt of sustained power, from a unit approximately the size of a softball. No radioactive waste, no fossil fuel consumption. Maintenance cycle of approximately 5 years between servicing. The room went silent as the board members absorbed the implications. Lucius Fox stood, approaching the hologram with the focused intensity of an engineer confronting something that shouldn't exist. The energy density alone. Fox's fingers moved through the holographic display, examining specifications. This violates 3 established laws of thermodynamics. The containment field would require materials we haven't discovered yet. The magnetic bottle design assumes access to precision manufacturing at the quantum level. He turned to Tony, eyes sharp. Where did you develop this? Privately funded research. Tony replied. The lie smooth because it was mostly true, just in a different universe. I've spent the last decade perfecting the core technology. The reactor in my chest is proof of concept. It's kept me alive for years, powers my personal equipment, and has never required external energy input. Your personal equipment, another board member interjected. A man whose nameplate read, Gerard Connolly. The armor you used to stop Scarecrow's attack at the gala. That's powered by this reactor technology. It is, Tony confirmed. Flight capability, defensive systems, energy projection, all running on sustained. Fusion output from a unit that weighs less than 5 pounds. And you're offering to share this with Wayne Enterprises? Connolly's skepticism was obvious. Forgive me, Mr. Stark, but technology this revolutionary is worth billions. Tens of billions. Why sell it to us instead of establishing your own corporation? Bruce spoke for the first time since the meeting began. His CEO voice, carrying authority that came from inherited wealth and decades of corporate manipulation. Because Mr. Stark understands that revolutionary technology requires infrastructure, manufacturing capabilities, and distribution networks that take decades to establish. Wayne Enterprises has all of those. What we don't have is the breakthrough. That puts us at the forefront of the next energy revolution. He gestured to the hologram. This partnership benefits both parties. We provide resources and reach. He provides innovation that leapfrogs our competition by nearly 2 decades. Plus, Tony added with a grin that was pure calculated charm. Terrible at corporate management, brilliant at invention, disaster at board meetings and shareholder presentations. I need partners who understand how to navigate the business side while I focus on making sure the technology actually works. Lucius Fox circled the hologram one more time, and Tony saw the exact moment the engineer's skepticism transformed into something else, hungry ambition, the desire to work with technology that redefined possible. If this is real, Fox said carefully, if these specifications are accurate and reproducible, Wayne Enterprises would dominate the global energy market within 5 years. We could provide clean power to regions that currently have no infrastructure. We could eliminate fossil fuel dependence. We could, he paused, the magnitude of the implications, catching up to his excitement, change everything. That's the goal, Tony said. Though I should mention, the technology comes with restrictions. No military applications. No weaponization. Every reactor built must include fail-safes preventing conversion to destructive use. His voice hardened slightly. I've seen what happens when power technology becomes war technology. I won't make that mistake again. Admirable ethics, the older woman said, but potentially limiting to profitability. Defense contracts are where the real money exists, Mr. Stark. Defense contracts are how you end up building weapons that kill civilians. Tony countered, and something in his voice suggested he was speaking from experience that still haunted him. I've already walked that path, made billions from it, also made corpses and created enemies who wanted revenge badly, enough to kidnap and torture me. Hence, he gestured to his chest, the reactor that's literally keeping me alive. Profitability at the cost of human life isn't a trade I'm willing to make anymore. Bruce nodded approvingly, and Tony caught the subtle signal. The board was convinced, or close enough. Lucius Fox was already mentally drafting research proposals. The other members were calculating stock prices and market disruption. I propose we move forward with a trial phase, Bruce said, standing to signal the meeting's conclusion. Mr. Stark will work directly with Mr. Fox and our advanced R&D team to develop a working prototype. We'll assess feasibility, production costs, and market strategy over the next 6 months. At that point, we reconvene to discuss full partnership terms. The board murmured agreement, already standing, already planning how to leverage this development. Tony shook hands, maintained his charming facade, and caught Lucius Fox's eye as the engineer lingered after the others had filed out. Walk with me, Mr. Stark, Fox said, gesturing toward the elevator. I'd like to discuss the technical specifications in more detail, particularly the magnetic containment system. Because if I'm reading your schematics correctly, you've solved a problem that's stumped every physicist since fusion research began. They rode the elevator down to the R&D levels, sterile white, corridors lined with laboratories where Wayne Enterprises developed everything, from advanced materials to medical technology. Fox led Tony into a secure lab, where holographic displays showed projects in various stages of development. Off the record, Fox said, his professional demeanor shifting slightly. I've worked with Bruce Wayne for 20 years. I know things about his nocturnal activities that most people would find surprising. And I know that he doesn't bring people into Wayne Enterprises without extensive vetting. He fixed Tony with a look that suggested he saw through the charming consultant act. So I'll ask you directly, are you what you appear to be? A genius inventor with revolutionary technology? Or are you something else? Something that explains why your reactor technology resembles nothing currently possible on Earth. Tony measured the question, recognizing another test. Bruce had warned him that Lucius Fox was brilliant, observant, and one of the few people who knew about Batman, which meant Fox deserved honesty, or at least a version of it that wouldn't compromise everything. I'm exactly what I appear to be, Tony said carefully. A genius who built something revolutionary because the alternative was death. Everything else, the implications, the impossibility, the fact that my technology shouldn't exist yet, those are complications. I'm still navigating. He met Fox's gaze. Bruce trusts you, which means I can probably trust you too. So yeah, there are aspects of my situation that don't fit normal patterns. But the technology is real, the applications are genuine, and my commitment to preventing weaponization is absolute. Fox studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good enough. I don't need to know everything, Mr. Stark. I just need to know you're not going to blow up my laboratories or attract the kind of attention that gets people killed. He pulled up schematics on his holographic display. Now, let's talk about scaling your reactor design for industrial applications. Because if we're going to change the world, we should probably start with the engineering. They worked through lunch, Fox's questions pushing Tony's expertise in ways that felt like collaboration rather than interrogation. The engineer absorbed concepts at startling speed, offered refinements that showed deep understanding of exotic physics, and demonstrated a moral framework that aligned with Tony's own. Technology should serve humanity, not exploit it. By 3 p.m., they drafted preliminary designs for a reactor that could power a city block indefinitely. By 5 p.m., they were arguing about magnetic field geometries with the passion of people who'd found intellectual equals. You know, Tony said, reviewing their joint calculations, in my experience, engineers this good are usually either working for governments or supervillains. How'd Wayne Enterprises manage to keep you? Fox smiled, something knowing in his expression. Let's just say, Bruce Wayne offers opportunities that go beyond corporate research. Sometimes the best way to change the world is to work for someone who's already trying to save it. He saved their designs to the secure server. Speaking of which, Bruce asked me to upgrade your armor. Something about Gotham-specific modifications. He wants stealth capabilities, Tony confirmed. Signature dampening, magic-resistant alloys. Protocols for operating in an environment where the impossible happens regularly. Basically, he wants my armor to be less look at me. I'm a flying tank, and more you didn't see me coming. Can't imagine why that would be necessary in Gotham, Fox said dryly. It's such a safe, reasonable city where dramatic entrances never attract psychotic attention. Tony laughed despite the exhaustion weighing on him. I'm starting to like you, Fox. You've got that rare combination of brilliant and sarcastic that makes collaboration bearable. I could say the same about you, Mr. Stark. Fox pulled up another set of schematics, armor designs that looked like someone had crossbred Tony's aesthetics with Batman's tactical philosophy. Bruce sent these over this morning. I've taken the liberty of drafting modifications based on known Gotham threats. Scarecrow's fear toxin, Poison Ivy's pheromones, Freeze's cryotechnology, Clayface's molecular structure. Your armor's current configuration is optimized for high-visibility combat. These changes optimize for survival in a city where being seen means being targeted. Tony examined the designs, seeing elegance in Fox's work, reduced profile, sound dampening, thermal masking, and materials that would resist both physical and magical attack. His armor, reimagined for a world where fear was a weapon and heroes operated from shadows. It's brilliant, Tony admitted. Also completely antithetical to everything I've built armors for. I'm the guy who paints them red and gold because I want people to know I'm there. This is Batman's philosophy embedded in Iron Man technology. Welcome to Gotham, Fox said, where survival requires adaptation. And adaptation requires surrendering the parts of yourself that made you successful. Elsewhere, he paused, something serious crossing his face. Bruce warned me you might resist these changes, that you'd see them as compromise rather than evolution. But Mr. Stark, I've watched brilliant people come to Gotham thinking their talent would protect them. Most of them are dead or broken now. The ones who survived learned to adapt. And if adapting means becoming something I don't recognize? Tony asked quietly, if Gotham's darkness requires so much change that I lose what made me a hero in the first place, then you'll have to decide, Fox replied, whether saving lives in Gotham is worth becoming someone different than the hero you were elsewhere. It's a question everyone who fights here eventually faces, including Bruce. Tony looked at the modified armor designs, sleek, dark, efficient, beautiful in their brutal practicality, but utterly lacking the hopeful brightness he'd always associated with being Iron Man, a tool for Gotham's endless night rather than a symbol of innovation's promise. How long to build it? He asked, committing to the path because survival mattered and pride was a luxury Gotham couldn't afford. 3 days if we work around the clock, Fox said. 1 week if we maintain reasonable schedules. Bruce suggested 3 days. But then Bruce doesn't sleep. So his sense of reasonable timelines is fundamentally skewed. 3 days, Tony decided. Because if Riddler's already reverse engineering my quantum technology and the Joker knows I exist, I'm going to need every advantage this city can provide. Plus, he managed a tired smile, I don't sleep much either. Genius insomnia comes with the territory. They returned to work, designing armor that would let Tony Stark survive in Bruce Wayne's city. Around them, Wayne Tower hummed with commerce and innovation, a beacon of hope rising above Gotham's corruption. But in the secure R&D lab, 2 engineers built tools for war in the shadows. And Tony felt the first real pieces of himself changing to accommodate a world that demanded heroes become something darker than they'd ever intended. His arc reactor pulsed beneath his shirt, steady, sure, unchanging. The one constant in a universe that kept demanding he rebuild himself from scratch. Outside, Gotham waited with all its terrible patience. And somewhere in the city's depths, the Riddler studied quantum formulas, and the Joker planned jokes that would test whether Tony Stark's heroism could survive Gotham's particular brand of madness. 3 days to build new armor. A lifetime to decide if the man who wore it would still be the hero who'd left his own world behind. The Iceberg Lounge sat on Gotham's waterfront like a jewel on a corpse, neon lights reflecting off water polluted by decades of industrial waste. Music pulsing through walls thick enough to hide screams. Tony adjusted his tie, feeling exposed without his armor, and followed Bruce through doors guarded by men whose suits couldn't quite hide the weapons underneath. Remind me why we're walking into a crime boss's nightclub without backup, Tony muttered, scanning faces that assessed them with predatory calculation. Because Oswald invited us, Bruce replied, his playboy persona fully engaged, loose posture, easy smile. Nothing suggesting he could kill everyone in the room with his bare hands. Refusing would be suspicious. Besides, the Penguin wants to make an offer. Better to hear it in person so we know what he's planning. They descended stairs into the main floor, ice sculptures, live music, beautiful people in expensive clothes, pretending they didn't know the owner, trafficked weapons, and controlled half of Gotham's underworld. Oswald Cobblepot held court at a central table, surrounded by associates who looked like they'd murdered for their positions and would murder to keep them. Mr. Wayne, Mr. Stark, the Penguin's voice carried genuine delight, or a performance so polished it might as well have been. Welcome to my humble establishment. Please sit. I've taken the liberty of ordering your drinks, bourbon for you, Mr. Wayne, and something with a bit more kick for the genius inventor. Tony accepted the offered seat, noting exits, counting security, calculating how fast he could reach the emergency repulsor gauntlets. Bruce had insisted he wear under his jacket. Mr. Cobblepot. Nice place. Very organized crime meets upscale dining. The ice sculptures are a particularly nice touch. Symbolic. Everything's symbolic in Gotham. Mr. Stark. The Penguin sipped his martini, gold teeth flashing. The ice represents the cold reality of business. Beautiful, temporary, melting under pressure, but memorable while it lasts. He gestured expansively, much like opportunities. Which brings me to why I invited you gentlemen here tonight. Bruce leaned back, every inch the bored billionaire. If this is another pitch about security contracts, Oswald, I've told you, Wayne Enterprises doesn't work with your associated businesses. Not security. No. The Penguin's eyes fixed on Tony with uncomfortable intensity. I'm interested in Mr. Stark's unique technology. Specifically, the arc reactor. I understand it produces clean, sustainable energy at outputs that make conventional power generation obsolete. He smiled, showing too many teeth. I represent investors who would pay handsomely for access to such innovation. No questions asked about patents or exclusivity. Cash transactions, untraceable, with profit margins. That would make your Wayne Enterprises deal look like pocket change. Tony felt the offer's weight. Criminal financing. No oversight. Freedom to build whatever he wanted with resources that wouldn't come with Bruce's restrictions. The kind of deal that Tony Stark, from 5 years ago, might have considered before. Learning what happened when genius operated without conscience. That's very generous, Tony said carefully. But I'm not in the business of selling to organizations that operate outside legal frameworks. Call me old-fashioned, but I prefer customers who won't use my technology to commit felonies. The Penguin's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. Mr. Stark in Gotham, legality is flexible. The politicians I could introduce you to, the judges who owe me favors, they could provide any documentation you require. Patents, licenses, regulatory approval. All very legal, very proper, very profitable. He leaned forward slightly. The alternative is conducting business in a city where accidents happen, where brilliant inventors sometimes discover that their laboratories suffer unfortunate fires, where technology they've refused to share becomes available through other means. Is that a threat? Tony kept his voice light, but his hand moved closer to the emergency gauntlet. Because in my experience, threatening engineers usually ends badly for everyone involved. Turns out we're creative about revenge. Not a threat, an observation. The Penguin gestured, and one of his associates produced a tablet, displaying footage that made Tony's stomach tighten. His armor, in the Wayne Tower lab. Multiple angles, high resolution. Clearly captured by surveillance equipment that shouldn't have been able to penetrate. Wayne Enterprises security. I already have detailed scans of your technology. Mr. Stark. Dimensional analysis. Material composition, power output specifications. My engineers are reverse engineering your designs as we speak. The offer isn't about obtaining your secrets. I have those. The offer is about making this profitable for both of us instead of competitors. Bruce's posture shifted minutely, the Playboy act cracking just enough to show Batman underneath. You hacked Wayne Enterprises. That's corporate espionage, Oswald. The kind that ends with federal charges and asset seizure. Prove it, the Penguin said pleasantly. Prove I commissioned the hack rather than purchasing already stolen data. Prove my engineers are working from your designs rather than independent research. Prove anything in a court system where half the judges attend my parties. He sipped his martini. Gentlemen, I'm not your enemy. I'm a businessman who recognizes value and wants to monetize it. Work with me, and we all profit. Work against me, his expression hardened, and I'll ensure Mr. Stark's technology enters the market through channels that don't include him. Tony's arc reactor pulsed faster, anger and calculation warring in his chest. Everything he'd built, every safeguard against weaponization, was being threatened by a crime boss with delusions of corporate legitimacy. No, Tony said flatly. I don't care how many judges you own or how detailed your scans are. I don't work with criminals. I don't enable the people who make this city a nightmare. And I definitely don't take threats lying down. He stood, Bruce rising with him. Enjoy your ice sculptures, Cobblepot. They'll outlast your criminal empire once the FBI finishes building their case. The Penguin's associates moved, blocking exits with coordinated precision. And suddenly the nightclub felt less like a venue and more like a trap. Sit down, Mr. Stark, the Penguin said. voice dropping into something dangerous. I haven't dismissed you yet, and leaving prematurely would be rude. In my establishment, rudeness has consequences. Tony's hand closed on the emergency gauntlet, but Bruce's hand on his shoulder stopped him. A slight pressure, signal code they'd practiced. Meaning, wait, I have this, trust me. Oswald, Bruce said, his voice shifting into something between Wayne and Batman. You're making a mistake. Threatening us in your own nightclub, with witnesses and security cameras, establishes criminal intent that even your corrupt judges can't ignore. Whatever you think you've gained through espionage, you're losing through stupidity. Am I? The Penguin smiled. Or am I establishing negotiating leverage? Mr. Stark's technology exists in my databases. My engineers understand its principles. Whether he cooperates or not, I profit. The only question is whether he profits too, or whether he spends the next decade watching inferior versions of his work flood Gotham's streets, funding criminals he claims to oppose. From across the nightclub, a new voice interrupted, feminine, carrying authority that made the Penguin's associates tense. That's enough, Oswald. Release them. A woman approached, moving through the crowd with the confidence of someone who commanded respect through presence rather than threats. Red hair, green dress, and eyes that assessed Tony with uncomfortable intensity. Commissioner Gordon's daughter. Oracle's voice supplied through the microcom in Tony's ear. Barbara Gordon, former Batgirl, currently GCPD consultant, knows about Batman. Ms. Gordon, the Penguin said with forced pleasantness. How unexpected. I didn't realize you frequented my establishment. I don't, Barbara replied, stopping at their table with relaxed alertness that reminded Tony of trained fighters. But when GCPD monitors pick up corporate espionage chatter involving Wayne Enterprises, I investigate, especially when the conversation involves threatening Gotham's largest employer. She produced a badge. You're going to let Mr. Wayne and Mr. Stark leave. Then you're going to submit your security footage and client data for GCPD review. Failure to comply constitutes obstruction. The Penguin's expression cycled through anger, calculation, and finally resignation. Of course, Ms. Gordon. I wouldn't dream of interfering with police business. Though I should mention, my surveillance systems experienced a technical malfunction this evening. Very unfortunate timing. Convenient, Barbara said dryly. Mr. Wayne, Mr. Stark, you're free to go. I'll escort you out, ensure there are no misunderstandings. They left the Iceberg Lounge with Barbara Gordon as a shield against the associates whose hands had moved toward weapons. Outside, Gotham's night air felt less oppressive than the nightclub's atmosphere, though not by much. Thank you, Bruce said once they'd reached the street where Alfred waited with the limousine. Though I'm curious how you knew we were there. Oracle called me, Barbara replied. And Tony caught the significance. She knew about Oracle, which meant she knew about Batman's network, which meant she was part of the operation. Said her surveillance detected trouble. I was nearby on another case. She fixed Tony with a look that was pure assessment. Mr. Stark, welcome to Gotham, where criminal organizations have IT departments and business meetings involve death threats. Exciting, isn't it? Thrilling, Tony said, adrenaline slowly fading. Though I could do without the part where someone's reverse engineering my life's work to arm Gotham's criminals. Any suggestions on how to stop that? Work with Oracle and Batman, Barbara said. They're very good at making problems disappear. Though fair warning, their methods sometimes involve breaking significantly more laws than the criminals they're fighting. She nodded to Bruce. Keep him alive, Bruce. Gotham eats people like him for breakfast. She walked away into Gotham's shadows, and Tony slumped against the limousine, reactor pulsing hard from stress. She knows, Tony said as they climbed into the vehicle. She knows you're Batman. Barbara was Batgirl for 3 years, Bruce confirmed. The limousine pulling into traffic, until the Joker shot her, paralyzed her, and forced her to find new ways to fight. Now she's Oracle, our information specialist, GCPD liaison, and occasionally, our conscience when we're about to do something stupid. He glanced at Tony. She also happens to be one of the best hackers on the planet. If anyone can trace and eliminate Cobblepot's stolen data, it's her. Good, Tony said, watching Gotham's streets slide past. Crime on every corner. Desperation in every face. A city that ground people down and expected them to thank it for the privilege. Because if Penguin's engineers actually succeed in building arc reactors, every criminal organization in Gotham will have access to unlimited clean energy, which means unlimited power for weapons, unlimited resources for operations, and the one thing I swore would never happen, my technology enabling the people. I built it to stop. Then we'll stop them, Bruce said with absolute certainty. Oracle will hack their databases, destroy the stolen plans, and brick their research systems. Batman will ensure Cobblepot understands that stealing from us has consequences. And you, he met Tony's eyes, will finish the upgraded armor and help me take down every criminal who thinks your genius is theirs to exploit. 3 days until the armor's ready, Tony said. Think we can last that long? In Gotham, Bruce's expression was pure dark humor. Probably not, but we'll adapt. We always do. The limousine carried them through streets where sirens wailed and shadows moved with predatory intent, and Tony Stark realized with absolute clarity that he'd officially become part of Batman's war, not as Iron Man, beacon of hope and technological triumph, but as something darker, something necessary, something that operated in Gotham's shadows and fought criminals who'd stolen his dreams to fund nightmares. His arc reactor pulsed, steady and sure, but the light felt dimmer somehow, corrupted by proximity to a city that demanded heroes sacrifice everything, including the ideals that made them heroes. In the first place, the alert came at 4 a.m., Oracle's voice cutting through the cave's darkness with urgency that made Tony's exhausted mind snap to full awareness. He'd been working for 18 hours straight, refining the armor modifications with Lucius Fox, and his hands shook from too much coffee and too little sleep. Batman, Iron Man, we have a problem, Oracle said, her voice tight. Multiple locations across Gotham are experiencing simultaneous power grid failures, but not random failures. Someone's systematically targeting substations using technology that matches Stark's arc reactor signature. Tony's blood went cold. The Penguin. He's already weaponized the stolen designs. Worse, Oracle replied, pulling up city maps on the Batcave's main screen. The substations being hit supply Gotham General Hospital, 3 police precincts, the financial district, and, she paused, Arkham Asylum. Someone's coordinating a massive attack using your technology as the weapon. ETA to complete blackout, 12 minutes. Bruce was already in his batsuit, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd prepared for this exact scenario 1,000 times. Robin, Nightwing, get to the hospital and police precincts. Protect the backup generators. Red Robin, financial district. Barbara, coordinate emergency services and keep GCPD from panicking. He turned to Tony. Arkham's yours. If the power fails there, every inmate escapes simultaneously. Your armor's not finished, but it's functional enough to fly and fight. Move. Tony's armor, sleek black with minimal red accents, designed for stealth rather than spectacle, sealed around him with new efficiency. The HUD flickered online, showing Gotham's power grid collapsing in real time. Bruce, if these are my designs being weaponized, I'm responsible for every death that results. Every escape, every crime enabled by the blackout. That's on me. Blame yourself later, Batman growled, already in the Batmobile. Stop it now. Arkham can't lose power. Last time it happened, 47 civilians died before we recaptured the inmates. This time, with Joker, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, and the rest all loose simultaneously. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Tony launched from the cave, his modified armor cutting through Gotham's night with near-silent repulsors, stealth systems making him nearly invisible to radar and visual detection. The city sprawled beneath him, lights flickering, dying, darkness spreading like infection across a body already sick with corruption. His comm crackled with updates. Nightwing here. Hospital's backup generator is under attack. Armed men with energy weapons. Definitely Stark tech derivatives. Engaging. Red Robin, financial district substation just exploded. Secondary charges planted. These aren't simple saboteurs, they're professionals. Oracle, GCPD is overwhelmed. Every precinct is reporting simultaneous emergencies. This is coordinated at a level we've never seen. Someone's orchestrated a citywide crisis. Tony's HUD locked onto. Arkham, the Gothic nightmare, rising from Gotham's outskirts, its lights flickering as backup systems, struggled against whatever attack was underway. He pushed his repulsors to maximum, the new armor responding with power that Bruce and Lucius's modifications had optimized for exactly this kind of emergency. He landed on Arkham's roof seconds before the main power died, plunging the facility into emergency, lighting that cast everything in blood-red shadows. His sensors detected the attack immediately, a device attached to the primary electrical junction, pulsing with energy signatures that were unmistakably based on his arc reactor design, but modified, improved, made more efficient, in ways that demonstrated whoever had reverse-engineered his work understood quantum mechanics at a level that shouldn't be possible from stolen scans alone. Oracle, I'm at Arkham, Tony reported, moving toward the device with sensors analyzing its construction. The weapon's sophisticated, not just Penguin's engineers copying my designs, someone with real expertise has refined the technology. This is genius-level work. Can you disarm it? Oracle asked. Tony examined the device, seeing elegant engineering, wrapped in malicious intent, his arc reactor's principles, twisted into a weapon that would shut down Arkham's electrical systems completely, including the electronic locks holding Gotham's most dangerous criminals. Yes, but it'll take time. The trigger mechanism is linked to a remote signal. Disarming it locally might cause remote detonation. I need to trace the signal, find whoever's controlling it. Tracing now, Oracle said. Signal's coming from, oh no. Tony, the signal originates from inside Arkham. Someone in the facility is controlling the device. Below him, emergency alarms wailed as cell doors began opening. One by one, electronic locks failing, backup systems compromised, and suddenly Arkham Asylum was vomiting its inmates into the corridors. Screams, laughter, the sound of guards being overwhelmed by criminals who'd waited years for exactly this opportunity. Tony dove through a skylight, armor absorbing impact as he landed in a corridor where chaos had already erupted. Inmates surged past him, some running for freedom, others attacking guards with the desperate violence of people who had nothing left to lose. Everyone down. Tony's external speakers amplified his voice with authority borrowed from Captain America's battlefield commands. Inmates, return to your cells, or I start using non-lethal force that will hurt significantly. Laughter answered him, multiple voices, recognizing the empty threat. These were people who'd been hurt by Gotham's best, who'd survived Batman's interrogations and come out more broken, but no less dangerous. Then one voice cut through the chaos, high-pitched and crackling with delight. Ooh, it's the Tin Man. And he's got a new paint job, much more Gotham appropriate. Black really brings out though I've compromised my ideals to survive in this hellhole. Vibe you've got going on. The Joker emerged from the crowd of escaping inmates, somehow having acquired a guard's nightstick, twirling it like a conductor's baton. Behind him, other major villains were organizing the chaos. Scarecrow distributing fear toxin canisters. Poison Ivy's plants already growing through floor cracks. Two-Face organizing inmates into tactical groups. Joker, Tony said, repulsors charging. Get back in your cell, or I'll put you there. Your choice. My choice. The Joker giggled, doing a theatrical spin. I love choices. They're so deliciously meaningless when you really think about it. Like, right now, you're choosing to threaten me instead of stopping the guy who's actually causing all this fun. He pointed down a corridor with his nightstick. Sublevel 3, Medical Wing. That's where your genius friend is right now, finishing his masterpiece. You could stop him, save Arkham, be the hero. Or, the smile widened. Impossibly, you could waste time fighting me and watch everything burn. Choose wisely, Iron Man. Tony's tactical systems screamed that engaging the Joker was a trap, that every second wasted was another inmate escaping. But his sensors confirmed movement in Sublevel 3, a single heat signature in the medical wing, surrounded by electronic equipment that matched the energy. Weapons control frequencies. Oracle, I'm going to Sublevel 3, Tony said, already moving. Someone's controlling the blackout from Arkham's medical wing. Tony, wait. Oracle's voice carried warning. But Tony was already blasting through security doors with controlled repulsor shots, descending into Arkham's depths, where the facility's worst cases were kept in isolation. The medical wing was pristine compared to the chaos above: white walls, sterile lighting, and in the center of a converted examination room, a figure hunched over computer equipment that was definitely not standard. "Arkham issue, Dr. Isley," Tony said, recognizing Poison Ivy from their encounter at the gala. "Barbara Gordon, thought you were GCPD, not a criminal mastermind orchestrating citywide blackouts." The figure turned, and Tony's HUD confirmed, "Not Barbara Gordon. Not Poison Ivy. Someone else entirely. A woman in her 30s with sharp features, brilliant eyes behind glasses, and a smile that carried the weight of someone who'd just executed a plan perfectly. Dr. Harleen Quinzel," she said, her voice different from when Tony had saved her, stronger, carrying manic energy barely contained. "Though after tonight, I think I prefer Harley Quinn. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" She gestured to the equipment. "Surprise. The psychiatrist you saved wasn't." Grateful, she was converted. Dr. Crane's fear toxin during the explosion, combined with weeks of therapy sessions with my puddin', gave me such wonderful clarity about Gotham's true nature. Tony's arc reactor pulsed faster, horror replacing tactical assessment. The woman he'd burned himself out to save had become one of them, another casualty of Gotham's darkness, another hero broken into villain. "Harleen, listen to me," Tony said, keeping his voice steady despite the implications crashing through his mind. "Whatever Joker told you, whatever Scarecrow's toxin made you believe, it's not real. You were a brilliant psychiatrist dedicated to helping people. Don't let them corrupt that." "Corrupt?" Harley laughed, the sound carrying genuine joy mixed with something shattered. "Sweetie, they didn't corrupt me. They liberated me. All those years trying to fix broken people, never understanding that we're all broken, that trying to be sane in an insane world is the real madness." She tapped the computer screen. "Your arc reactor technology? Gorgeous, brilliant, and so perfectly suited for proving that even genius heroes can't save Gotham. Every substation that fails, every system that crashes, it's all using your innovation, your hope, your belief that technology could save people." "Harleen, Dr. Quinn to you," she corrected cheerfully. "Now you've got about 90 seconds before the final substations fail and Gotham experiences a complete blackout, which means hospitals on life support die, traffic systems cause massive accidents, and 3 million people learn what it's like when the city's infrastructure," she snapped her fingers, "just stops working. All thanks to the genius who thought his arc reactor would save the world." Tony's HUD showed the countdown: 127, 126, each second bringing Gotham closer to catastrophic failure. "I can stop this," Tony said, moving toward the equipment. "Disarm the weapons, restore the grid, prevent the deaths." "Sure you can," Harley agreed, pulling out a detonator. "But here's the fun part. The equipment's booby-trapped. You disarm it manually, and I trigger explosives that'll bring down this entire wing, including the cells holding Killer Croc, Mad Hatter, and Victor Zash." Or, she tilted her head, smile widening, "you let the blackout happen. Flee Arkham, and save yourself while Gotham suffers." Hero's choice. The corridor behind. Tony erupted with movement, Batman arriving with Nightwing and Red Robin, having fought through escaping inmates to reach the medical wing. Harley, Batman's voice carried something Tony had never heard before, genuine pain beneath the gravel. "Don't do this. You were better than them. Stronger." "I was weak," Harley replied, and for a moment, something vulnerable showed through the manic energy. "Trying to fix people who couldn't be fixed. Trying to make sense of senselessness. But Mr. J showed me the truth. There is no sense. Just chaos. Just the joke we're all too afraid to laugh at." She raised the detonator. "So here's the punchline. Batsy, your new friend's technology becomes Gotham's downfall. The girl you save becomes its destroyer. And everyone learns that heroism in this city always ends in tragedy." 045, 044. Tony's mind raced through options, calculating probabilities, searching for the solution that saved everyone. But Gotham's fundamental equation wouldn't resolve, save the grid and risk explosion, or let the blackout happen and doom thousands. Then Bruce's hand on his shoulder, and Batman's voice in his ear. Sometimes you can't save everyone. Sometimes you choose who lives. This is that moment. No, Tony said, his arc reactor flaring brighter. There's always another way. He fired both repulsors, not at Harley, but at the ceiling above her, bringing down a controlled collapse that separated her from the detonator while simultaneously using his armor's electromagnetic field to fry the booby-trap circuits. The explosives went inert, the detonator useless. And Harley Quinn was buried under rubble that wouldn't kill her, but would definitely keep her contained. Then Tony interfaced directly with the control equipment, his armor's systems flooding the network with commands that overrode Harley's programming. The arc reactor weapons received new instructions: shut down, release their charge harmlessly, and brick themselves beyond repair. 012, 011. Across Gotham, substations that had been dying began stabilizing. Backup systems kicked in. The blackout that would have killed thousands was averted by seconds. 003, 002, 001. Power restored. Tony collapsed against the equipment, armor systems warning him that he'd drained his reactor dangerously low again, that he'd pushed himself beyond safe limits for the second time in a week. But Gotham's lights were on. Arkham's inmates were being recaptured by GCPD and Batman's team. And in the rubble, Harley Quinn's laughter echoed, not defeated, just delayed. Good show, Iron Man. Her voice called from the debris. But you'll learn eventually. Gotham always wins. Always breaks you. Ask your buddy Batman how many people he's lost to this city. How many heroes have fallen. You're just next in line. Batman pulled Tony to his feet, and they ascended toward Arkham's main levels where order was slowly, painfully being restored. You saved her again, Bruce said quietly. Harley, you could have let the rubble kill her. Would have been justified. I don't kill, Tony replied, exhausted beyond measure. Not even the people who use my technology against me. Not even the ones Gotham's broken into weapons. Because the moment I start accepting that some people deserve death, I become what I'm fighting against. That's why you'll never truly understand Gotham, Bruce said. And Tony couldn't tell if it was admiration or warning in his voice. You still believe everyone can be saved. That redemption is always possible. That hope matters. And you don't. Batman was silent as they emerged into Arkham's courtyard, where inmates were being loaded into transport vehicles, where Commissioner Gordon coordinated the massive recapture operation, where Gotham's endless cycle of crime and punishment ground forward with mechanical inevitability. I believe hope is necessary, Bruce finally said. But I also believe Gotham punishes it, tests it, breaks it so thoroughly that maintaining hope becomes an act of defiance, rather than faith. He looked at Tony, and behind the cowl, something ancient and weary showed through. You saved the city tonight. But Harley Quinn was a good person who tried to help criminals. And Gotham turned her into one of them. How long before it does the same to you? Tony looked at his armor. Black where it had been red. Muted where it had been bright. Redesigned to operate in shadows rather than shine in light. He felt Gotham's weight pressing down. Felt the city testing him. Felt the darkness whispering that compromise was necessary. That ideals were luxuries. That surviving meant becoming something harder than heroes should be. His arc reactor pulsed, dimmer than before, but still glowing. Still refusing to go dark. However long it takes, Tony said. Because if I stop believing people can be better, can choose differently, can be saved, then Gotham's already won. And I didn't survive Thanos, dimension hopping, and your paranoid training regimen just to surrender to a city's nihilism. Batman almost smiled. Almost. Then prove it, he said. Because tomorrow, Riddler will analyze tonight's attack and adapt. Joker will plan something worse. Penguin will find new ways to weaponize your technology. And Gotham will keep testing whether your hope can survive its reality. They returned to the Batcave as dawn broke over. Gotham, gray light, that did nothing to dispel the shadows. New day that promised the same violence as every day before it. Tony Stark had saved the city, but the city had taken pieces of him to do it. And the man in the black armor wondered how many more pieces he could afford to lose before the hero in the arc reactor disappeared entirely. The media called it the Iron Knight, when an unknown vigilante in black armor had prevented Gotham's complete infrastructure collapse while Batman's team recaptured Arkham's escaped inmates. Commissioner Gordon gave a press conference praising the mysterious hero's intervention. Wayne Enterprises. Stock climbed as investors celebrated the new security partnership. The city moved forward as Gotham always did, accepting miracles and nightmares with equal indifference. Tony stood in the Batcave 72 hours later, staring at his completed armor, sleek, dark, efficient. Everything Bruce and Lucius had promised. Everything Iron Man had never been meant to be. "You're thinking too loud," Bruce said, approaching from the training area where he'd been running combat drills that would have hospitalized normal humans. "I can hear your crisis of identity from across the cave." "My armor used to be red and gold," Tony replied, not looking away from the black metal. Bright, visible, a symbol that said, "I'm here, I'm helping. You can trust me." This, he gestured at the Gotham version. "This says, you won't see me coming until it's too late." When did I agree to that philosophy? When you decided to survive in Gotham, instead of die maintaining aesthetics. Bruce towered over the computer console, pulling up news footage from the past week. "Look at the results. You've stopped 2 mass casualty events, prevented Riddler from acquiring dimensional technology, saved Harleen Quinzel twice, even if she's now Harley Quinn. The armor works. The modifications keep you alive. Questioning them now is counterproductive." "Is it?" Tony turned, facing the man who'd become mentor and jailer in equal measure. "Because from where I'm standing, I've compromised every principle I built Iron Man to represent. I operate in shadows now. I follow your rules. I've let Gotham change my armor, my methods," and he touched his chest, feeling the reactor pulse. "Probably me. At what point do I stop being Tony Stark and become Bruce Wayne's darker, angrier echo?" "When you stop asking that question," Bruce replied, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent walking that exact line. "The moment you accept the darkness without fighting it, you've lost. But fighting it while using its tools, that's how you survive. Long enough to make a difference." Oracle's voice interrupted. Through the caves, speakers hate to break up the philosophical debate, but we have a situation. Riddler just broadcast another message. And this time, he's not playing games. He's declaring war. The main screen activated, showing Edward Nygma in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Question marks painted on walls behind him. Manic energy barely contained behind rimless glasses. "Good evening, Gotham," Riddler began, his theatrical presentation sharpened by genuine fury. "Or should I say, good evening to the genius who humiliated me. Tony Stark, the man who thinks his technology makes him special, who believes his arc reactor entitles him to interfere in Gotham's natural order." He leaned toward the camera. "I've studied you, Mr. Stark. Your patterns, your psychology, your desperate need to prove you're the smartest person in every room. And I've concluded something fascinating. You're not here to help Gotham. You're here to feed your ego, to prove that Tony Stark can succeed where others fail." Tony's hands clenched, the accuracy of the psychological assessment hitting harder than he'd expected. "So here's your final exam," Riddler continued. "I've placed devices throughout Gotham, not bombs this time, but something more elegant. Quantum destabilizers, built using the technology you so carelessly introduced to our dimension. Each device creates a localized dimensional rift, pulling matter from this reality into the space between universes. Permanent, irreversible, devastating." The screen split, showing multiple locations across Gotham, the financial district, the docks, Robinson Park, and Wayne Tower itself. For locations, for devices, for hours. But here's the twist, Mr. Stark, the devices are linked. Disarm one incorrectly, and all 4 activate simultaneously, creating a cascade effect that tears Gotham apart at the quantum level. The only way to stop them is to solve the master equation I've encoded into their operating systems. Riddler's smile was pure malice. "And that equation? It's based on dimensional physics you invented. Your technology, your responsibility, your failure if Gotham ceases to exist." The broadcast ended, replaced by a timer. 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 46 seconds. "He's serious," Oracle confirmed, her systems already tracking the quantum signatures. "I'm reading dimensional instabilities at all 4 locations. These devices are active and armed." "Tony," her voice tightened, "if Riddler's right about the cascade effect, We're looking at a localized dimensional collapse. Gotham wouldn't be destroyed. It would simply cease to have ever existed. Tony felt the weight of it, his technology, his genius, weaponized into something that could erase a city from reality. Every fear he'd had about the arc reactor falling into wrong hands materialized into a threat that made nuclear weapons look merciful. I need to see the devices, Tony said, already moving toward his armor. Analyze the quantum signatures. Understand how Riddler's adapted my dimensional bridge principles. If I can. Stop, Bruce commanded, his Batman voice brooking no argument. This is exactly what he wants. You, isolated, trying to solve an impossible puzzle while he watches you fail. We need strategy, not heroic sacrifice. We don't have time for strategy. Tony's frustration exploded. Weeks of compromise and adaptation and darkness finally breaking through his control. This is my fault, Bruce. My technology. My failure to protect it. My inability to stop criminals in this nightmare city from weaponizing everything I've built. I have to fix this. Why? Bruce stepped closer, intensity radiating despite his stillness. Because your ego demands it? Because Tony Stark needs to prove he's the smartest person in Gotham? That's what Riddler's counting on. Your pride making you predictable. It's not about pride. Tony's arc reactor flared brighter. It's about responsibility. I brought dimensional technology to Gotham. I created the weapon Riddler's using. Every person who dies if this fails, every reality that collapses, that's on me. And unlike you, I don't accept that some things are unsolvable. I don't surrender to impossible odds. I find another way. Silence filled the cave, broken only by the timer counting down. 3 hours, 57 minutes, and 12 seconds. 3 hours, 57 minutes, and 11 seconds. Then find it, Bruce said quietly. But not alone. Not the way you're used to operating. This is Gotham, Stark. Lone heroes die here. Teams survive. So stop trying to be Iron Man facing down Thanos single-handed. And start being part of Batman's network. Tony wanted to argue, wanted to insist he could handle this, wanted to prove that his methods worked even in Gotham's darkness. But he looked at Bruce, at the man who'd survived decades fighting, a city that killed heroes, who'd built a network of allies because he'd learned the hard way that going alone meant death. Okay, Tony said, forcing himself to accept help even when every instinct screamed to take control. What's the plan? Bruce turned to the computer, pulling up Gotham's map with the 4 device locations highlighted. Oracle, I need dimensional physics analysis on each site. Barbara, coordinate with GCPD to establish perimeters. Evacuate civilians, but don't let Riddler know we're coming. Nightwing, Red Robin, Robin, you're on containment. If this goes wrong, your job is damage control. Minimize casualties. And us? Tony asked. We solve Riddler's puzzle, Bruce replied. But not by playing his game. By changing the rules. They suited up. Tony in his black armor that felt like betrayal and survival in equal measure. Bruce in the cowl that transformed billionaire into legend. The Batmobile screamed through Gotham's streets toward Wayne Tower, where Riddler had placed the first device with deliberate symbolism. He wants you at your own building, Bruce said, navigating traffic with the controlled aggression of someone who'd driven these streets for decades. Wants the public failure, the humiliation of Tony Stark unable to protect his own headquarters. Which means the Wayne Tower device is probably a trap, designed to capture or kill you while the real threat develops elsewhere. So we ignore it. Tony's tactical systems painted the tower in his HUD, showing the quantum signature pulsing at its peak. We acknowledge its bait and use that. Bruce's hands moved across the Batmobile's controls, activating systems that made Tony's armor look simple by comparison. Oracle, can you spoof Tony's armor signature? Make Riddler think he's at Wayne Tower while we're actually somewhere else. Already on it, Oracle replied, deploying holographic decoy with full electronic signature mimicry. To Riddler's sensors, Tony Stark just arrived at Wayne Tower. In reality, we're going to the docks, Bruce finished, where Riddler's real masterpiece is probably waiting. The place where Gotham's working class will die first when the dimensional collapse begins. Because Edward Nygma is a narcissist, but he's also a sadist who knows killing the poor sends a message the rich can't ignore. The Batmobile altered course, racing toward Gotham's industrial waterfront where decades of pollution had transformed the harbor into toxic waste decorated with abandoned warehouses. 3 hours 51 minutes, Tony said, watching the timer tick down in his HUD. If we're wrong about this, we're not wrong, Bruce said with absolute certainty. I've fought Riddler for 17 years. I know how his mind works. The tower is theater. The docks are murder. And somewhere between them, he's watching, waiting to see if we're smart enough to survive. They abandoned the Batmobile 3 blocks from the target site, approaching on foot through shadows that swallowed sound. Tony's upgraded armor moved silently. No repulsor glow, no mechanical whine. Just efficient violence wrapped in stealth technology that would have made his earlier self weep at the compromise. The warehouse Riddler had chosen was perfect, isolated, structurally unsound, surrounded by water that would accelerate the dimensional cascade if it activated. And in its center, a device that made Tony's arc reactor look primitive, elegant. Engineering incorporating principles he'd theorized but never implemented. Quantum mechanics operating at levels that required genius level understanding of physics that existed between dimensions. He's not just smart, Tony whispered, analyzing the device through his sensors. He's brilliant. This is better than my original dimensional bridge design. More stable, more efficient, more deadly, Bruce finished. Which means disarming it requires matching his intelligence, while avoiding the traps he's built for someone thinking like him. They approached the device carefully, and Tony's HUD identified 17 fail-safes, each one designed to trigger catastrophic failure if he attempted standard disarmament. The master equation Riddler had mentioned was displayed on a screen, complex mathematics that described dimensional topology, quantum fluctuations, and probability cascades. I can solve this, Tony said, his mind already processing variables. It's advanced, but the principles are sound. I built the original technology this is based on. I can reverse engineer his modifications and trigger the trap, Bruce interrupted. Because Riddler knows you'll think that way. Knows your ego demands you solve his puzzle through superior intellect. Which means the actual solution isn't mathematical. It's psychological. Tony turned from the device, looking at Batman standing in shadows, cape wrapped around armored form. Explain. Riddler's obsessed with proving he's the smartest person in any room, Bruce said, circling the device with predatory assessment. Every riddle, every puzzle, every trap, they're all designed to demonstrate intellectual superiority. But his weakness is that obsession. He can't resist proving he's smarter, which means he can't resist providing a solution hidden in the complexity. You're saying the equation itself contains the answer? I'm saying Edward. Nigma is incapable of creating an unsolvable problem because unsolvable problems don't prove intelligence. They prove futility. Bruce pointed at the equation structure. Look at the variables. Look at how they're arranged. There's a pattern that has nothing to do with dimensional physics and everything to do with his psychological need to be recognized. Tony studied the equation again and suddenly saw it, hidden in the mathematical complexity. A sequence that spelled out words when converted to alphanumeric code. A message from Riddler to whoever was smart enough to find it. Smart enough to cheat, but too proud to admit it. It's not a solution, Tony realized. It's an accusation. He's saying the only way to win is to cheat, to bypass the puzzle entirely rather than solving it legitimately. And he's counting on my pride preventing me from taking that route. Exactly, Bruce said. So we cheat. Oracle, can you override the device's quantum processors remotely? Negative, Oracle replied. The encryption is too sophisticated. I'd need physical access to the control systems, and they're shielded against remote intrusion. Batman, this is genuinely brilliant work. Whoever helped Riddler build this understood both technology and psychology at levels that an explosion rocked Wayne Tower across the city, visible from the warehouse through shattered windows. A fireball that suggested the decoy had triggered something catastrophic. The tower device just detonated. Oracle's voice carried horror. Civilian casualties unknown. But Batman, her systems processed data at light speed. The tower explosion was conventional, not quantum. Riddler used your decoy to trigger a separate trap. He's been ahead of us the entire time. Tony's HUD showed the timer. 3 hours, 14 minutes, and 27 seconds. and all four quantum devices pulsing in synchronization, their countdown accelerating. He forced our hand. Bruce growled, fury bleeding through tactical assessment. Made us commit to the docks, triggered the tower explosion to create chaos. And now the devices are linked in a cascade that activates in 3 hours 14 minutes. Tony finished. Unless we disable them simultaneously, which requires being in 4 places at once, which is impossible. For normal people, Bruce activated his comm, speaking with rapid precision. Oracle, coordinate with every member of the network. Nightwing takes Robinson Park. Red Robin handles the financial district. I've got the docks. Tony, he fixed him, with a look that carried absolute certainty. You get Wayne Tower. Your building, your technology, your responsibility. But you're not disarming it. You're using your armor's quantum systems to create an interference pattern that prevents all 4 devices from achieving critical cascade. That'll work? Tony's mind raced through the physics, seeing the elegant solution Bruce had identified. If I generate the right frequency disruption, the quantum entanglement between devices breaks down. They become independent units instead of linked cascade. Then each location can be disarmed individually. Exactly. Bruce was already moving toward the exit. 3 hours, 13 minutes. Everyone moves simultaneously on my mark. Failure means Gotham disappears from reality. Success means we get to fight Riddler another day. He paused at the warehouse door. Stark, when you get to the tower, you'll find Riddler waiting. This was always about confronting you personally, about proving his intelligence makes him superior. Don't let him bait you into conversation. Don't try to prove you're smarter. Just generate the interference pattern and get out. And if he's rigged the tower to collapse? Tony asked. Batman's smile behind the cowl was pure predator. Then we all better be very good at our jobs. They scattered into Gotham's night, 4 heroes racing toward 4 locations, each carrying the weight of a city that had never asked to be saved but desperately needed salvation anyway. Tony's armor screamed through the sky toward Wayne Tower, where smoke still poured from the decoy explosion, where emergency services struggled to contain damage, where Edward Nigma waited, with the patient certainty of someone who'd orchestrated this confrontation. From the beginning, the tower's observation deck had been transformed into a cathedral of question marks, painted on walls, carved into floors, arranged in lights that formed patterns only genius could decode. And in the center, the quantum device pulsed with energy that bent reality around it, making the air shimmer with probability fluctuations. Riddler stood beside it, arms spread in theatrical welcome. Mr. Stark, so glad you could make it to the finale. Though I see you brought friends. Oracle's monitoring our conversation. Batman's team is positioned at the other sites. And you've already figured out my puzzle's true solution. His smile carried genuine admiration mixed with fury. You're good. Better than I expected. Which makes beating you so much more satisfying. I'm not here to beat you, Tony said. His armor's systems already generating the quantum interference pattern Bruce had described. I'm here to stop you from committing mass murder. There's a difference. Is there? Riddler circled the device with proprietorial pride. Because from where I stand, you're just another genius using his intelligence to impose his will on a world that doesn't deserve it. We're the same, Stark. Brilliant minds operating in a sea of mediocrity. The only difference is I'm honest about my superiority, while you pretend yours is altruism. We're not the same, Tony replied. The interference pattern building in his arc reactor, harmonizing with frequencies that would break the quantum entanglement. I use my genius to help people. You use yours to hurt them. That's not similarity. That's the defining line between hero and villain. Hero, Riddler laughed, the sound echoing off question mark-covered walls. You think you're a hero? You brought dimensional technology to Gotham, taught our criminals new ways to destroy, and now you're scrambling to contain the chaos you created. You're not saving us, Stark. You're fighting the consequences of your own arrogance. The interference pattern reached critical strength, and Tony released it, a pulse of quantum energy that flooded the tower and propagated through the air toward every linked device in Gotham. His HUD showed the cascade effect beginning to break down, the entanglement fracturing. Everyone now, Batman's voice commanded through the calm. Across Gotham, for heroes worked. simultaneously disarming. Devices that had been impossible alone but were merely difficult together. Red Robin's technical expertise neutralized the financial district threat. Nightwing's speed disabled Robinson Park's device before it could achieve criticality. Batman's brutal efficiency tore apart the Doc's equipment with precision born from decades of experience. And Tony stood in Wayne Tower, watching Riddler's masterpiece fail as teamwork overcame individual genius. No, Riddler whispered, watching his screens show each device shutting down. No, this was perfect. The equation was unsolvable. You couldn't have. His eyes widened with realization and fury. You cheated. You bypassed the puzzle entirely. I adapted. Tony interrupted. Learn that solving puzzles alone is less effective than working with people who understand things I don't. Batman taught me that. Gotham taught me that. And you? He stepped closer to Riddler, armor imposing despite its muted colors. You taught me that the smartest person in the room isn't the one who solves impossible problems. It's the one who recognizes when the problem requires more than intelligence to overcome. GCPD burst onto the observation deck, Commissioner Gordon leading tactical officers who'd become experts at recapturing Gotham's criminal elite. They surrounded Riddler with the efficiency of people who'd done this particular arrest too many times. Edward Nygma, Gordon said, producing handcuffs designed for metahuman containment. You're under arrest for attempted mass murder, terrorism, and crimes I'm frankly too tired to enumerate right now. Riddler didn't resist, but his eyes never left Tony. This isn't over. Stark, I'll study you, learn you, build puzzles specifically designed to exploit your weaknesses. Because you're not special. You're just another genius who'll eventually discover that Gotham breaks everyone. Maybe, Tony replied. But not today. They led Riddler away, and Tony collapsed against the quantum device he'd neutralized, exhaustion crashing through him like a wave. His arc reactor pulsed weakly, drained nearly to minimum by the interference pattern's energy requirements. Batman arrived minutes later, cape swirling as he assessed the scene. Tower secure? Tower secure, Tony confirmed. Riddler's contained. Devices are disarmed. Gotham continues its slow suicide for another day. Bruce approached, and something in his posture suggested pride, or perhaps recognition. You listened. Accepted help instead of trying to solo this. That's growth. Yeah, well, Tony managed a tired smile. Turns out even genius billionaires need backup occasionally. Who knew? He looked at his black armor, at the city sprawling beyond Wayne Tower's windows, at Gotham's endless cycle of violence and heroism. Bruce, how much longer can we do this? Fight criminals who weaponize everything. Save a city that never stays saved. Sacrifice pieces of ourselves to maintain order in chaos. Until we can't, Bruce replied simply. Until the mission kills us, or breaks us, or we find successors willing to carry the weight. That's the bargain Gotham demands. That's the cost of being necessary. Tony thought about his world, about the Avengers, about Pepper, about the future he'd left behind when dimensional rifts had thrown him into this nightmare. He thought about his armor's transformation from beacon to shadow, about compromises he'd made, about the man he was becoming in Gotham's darkness. His arc reactor pulsed, dimmer than it had been in his own universe, but still glowing, still refusing to surrender to the night. Then I guess we keep going, Tony said, pushing himself upright despite exhaustion that penetrated to his bones. Keep fighting, keep adapting, keep proving that Gotham's darkness doesn't get the final word on who we are or what we stand for. That's the spirit, Bruce said, something almost resembling warmth in his voice. Welcome to Gotham, Tony Stark. You might actually survive here. They stood together on Wayne Tower's observation deck as dawn broke over the city, gray light that did nothing to dispel shadows. New day that promised the same violence as every day before. But Tony Stark was still standing, still fighting, still maintaining hope in a city that considered hope a liability. And if that wasn't heroism, if maintaining light in the darkest place wasn't what heroes did regardless of cost, then maybe heroism was something more complicated than Tony had ever imagined. His arc reactor pulsed in agreement, and Gotham sprawled beneath them, and somewhere in the city's depths, new criminals were already planning, and the cycle continued. Eternal and exhausting and absolutely necessary. Because someone had to stand in the darkness. Someone had to refuse to let it win, even if the cost was everything. Especially then. The quantum signature appeared again 6 weeks later, not an attack, but a doorway. Tony stood in the Batcave, his black armor hanging like a promise and a threat, and stared at calculations that suggested dimensional stability had been restored enough for him to attempt. Returning home. You could go back, Bruce said, standing beside him at the computer. Return to your universe, your team, your life. Tony thought about his world, bright, hopeful, where heroes operated in daylight and technology was celebrated rather than weaponized by criminals. He thought about Pepper's smile, about the Avengers' camaraderie, about building things that inspired rather than intimidated. Then he looked at Gotham on the monitors, crime in progress across 17 sectors. Joker's latest escape from Arkham, Penguin rebuilding his empire, Riddler already planning revenge from his cell. A city that never stopped bleeding, never stopped demanding heroes sacrifice themselves to its darkness. I should go, Tony said quietly. This isn't my world. These aren't my people. I have responsibilities elsewhere. But you won't, Bruce observed. Because you've seen what Gotham does to heroes. And you've decided it needs someone who remembers what heroism looked like before the darkness corrupted it. Someone who maintains hope even when hope is stupid. Tony's hand moved to his chest, feeling the arc reactor's pulse. 6 weeks ago, I would have called you paranoid, obsessive, and frankly terrifying. Now I understand why Batman exists. Why Gotham needs someone willing to become the thing criminals fear. He met Bruce's eyes. But it also needs someone who refuses to become only that, who maintains the light even when shadows are tactically superior. The light gets you killed, Bruce warned. Maybe, Tony smiled. But dying while maintaining your principles beats surviving by abandoning them. At least, that's what I've decided during my extended nightmare vacation in your city. Bruce almost smiled. Almost. You're staying. For now, Tony confirmed. Until Gotham stops trying to kill me. Or I solve the dimensional bridge problem. Or I completely lose my mind and start painting question marks on things. Whichever comes first. Welcome to the family, Bruce said, and extended his hand. Tony shook it, sealing a partnership that would define both men's futures. Batman's darkness balanced by Iron Man's light. Gotham's shadows illuminated by an arc reactor that refused to go dark. Two genius billionaires proving that heroism could survive even in a city designed to destroy it. Outside, Gotham continued its eternal struggle. But in the Batcave, two heroes stood together, and their combined refusal to surrender meant the darkness would never completely win. Tony Stark had come to Gotham as Iron Man, beacon of hope, symbol of innovation, hero who operated in light. He would remain as something new, shadow and light, hope and pragmatism, proof that even in Gotham's nightmare, heroism could evolve without being destroyed. His arc reactor pulsed in the darkness, and somewhere above, the bat signal burned against storm clouds. Two symbols, two heroes, one city that would test them both until only the strongest elements remained.